everyone, and welcome to the 36th episode of the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and I come to you after Gamer Christmas, the multiple days of what used to be the biggest event in the gaming of the year, the NFL, the Super Bowl of gaming time, which is E3, now rebranded by Santa Keighley himself into Summer Games Fest. So we have Summer Games Fest to talk about. We have the Sony State of Play, and we, of course, have Microsoft's Xbox presentation, kind of giving us an idea of what big releases are on the horizon. Always a fun time to talk about. And in between all of those conferences, we had another major happening. Of course, the Switch 2 launched for consumers this previous week, which is, of course, a major deal. We don't always get new hardware, or technically a next-generational console from any of the publishers. So we have a lot to talk about. I have hands-on impressions from Switch 2, Mario Kart World, and Nintendo's Welcome Tour, the wonderfully not free manual that you can pay for to learn about your Switch 2. But I have impressions on all of those things. We're going to be going through all of the games from all the announcements at all the conferences. It's a large show, gigantic show, and I hope you stick around. But before we get into that, why not give us a like, a review, possibly a comment on your favorite podcasting service? We're anywhere and everywhere. I think Apple, Spotify, Podcast Addict, just wherever the heck you want to listen, we're around. So give us a review, and why not, while you're at it, if you want to be a part of the show, you can send us an email, a question, a comment, or maybe even a concern to the Plug and Play email address at plugandplaypodcast1@gmail.com. It's in the description of the podcast if you can't remember. And also down there, we have timestamps. It's a labor of love. I do it for you in case you don't want to listen to something I'm saying. If it's too boring, if it's just not what you're into, I get it. I've been there, and we have timestamps there for you to jump to what you're most interested in. But I can already feel my voice leaving my body. This is going to be a strenuous show for me and my vocal cords, not only because I'm recovering from a little bit of a cold, but because this is just going to be, we just have a lot. Like, this is just a big show. I'm very vocal about how I love E3 time and kind of getting to sit around and experience all of these big reveals and, anticipate and get hyped for these great games that are on the horizon. This year, we had 3 major conferences, really several others if you kind of want to trickle into the details, like Double Fine's indie showcase that happened right after the Game Awards. There was also several other things that happened Saturday, such as like a women's games conference, and I think like a minority group game conference, and I think maybe even like an LGBTQ or something along those lines conference as well. So like really everybody was kind of represented somewhere. The problem with that is that none of those conferences really show anything worth talking about. It's the sad and honest truth, right? Is like all the big conference like announcements happen at the big 3. Microsoft and Nintendo did not have one this year because they just released the Switch 2 literally in the same time frame. So we'd normally have probably a Nintendo Direct that probably kind of coincided with this time frame as well. And we're still kind of having a trickle of things happening. On the day I'm recording this, we have a Death Stranding 2 presentation that's happening. We just had a Metal Gear Solid / Silent Hill F Konami conference that was announced for later in the week. So it's just kind of that time where a lot of companies are starting to get those announcements out for games that, now they kind of know are ready to come out this year, which of 100% some are still going to get pushed to 2026, but it is what it is, to kind of give investors an idea of what's going to be on store shelves so that they can kind of have expectations for the coming calendar year and all that. It's all about the money, people, okay? It's not about you and me, playing video games. It's about the money, okay? But we're going to start off with the Sony State of Play. To give a brief aside, this year, and I'll just go ahead and say it, was a little underwhelming, I think is the best word. We're definitely going to get into that a little bit more with Summer Games Fest, which I think was honestly, like, I'm not going to say a waste of time. That sounds a little harsh, but, like, I think we were all kind of expecting a lot more. Now that we know when Grand Theft Auto is coming out, I was expecting a big slew of games to be pushing for release dates within 2025, like desperately, just, yeah, sure, we'll get it out, like whatever it takes. Like, we're just trying to avoid the GTA window. And maybe these games were the ones that did that. It's hard for me to really know. But I don't know. I was just expecting a lot more wow factor from these announcements than we got. A lot more surprises. And I really didn't see a lot of big wowing announcements that I'm kind of used to, at least one or two from these presentations. So, kind of, setting expectations around that. I think Sony's was actually the best conference we had this year, or this year being this summertime, this E3-ish time frame, which is surprising. I was expecting a lot more from Summer Games Fest, and then when Summer Games Fest didn't deliver, I was expecting Xbox to pretty much have a lockdown on all these really big announcements. And while there's something in every single one of these conferences for everyone, it is undeniable that all of them are kind of missing a huge big drop, like mic drop moment that's like, oh dang, that's happening? That's crazy. But we're going to get into it. I know I've kind of beaten around the bush for a while here, but we're going to get right into State of Play. We're going to be going in all of these conferences in chronological order, so everything that was announced as it was announced in these conferences. So, the big wow moment should be at the end, or hopefully. That's normally how these conferences are kind of presented. And, if I don't have anything to say about these games, I'm going to try to move on as quickly as possible because we literally have dozens of games to address here. And I'm going to try to, I haven't had a lot of time to do a lot of research on every single one of these games, so I have a couple of blurbs here and there about a few of them, but a lot of this is going to be my personal impressions, what I feel about them, how I feel about the announcements, and so on and so forth. So, Sony State of Play opens with Lumines Arise. Lumines is I'm not going to say old school. Old school sounds a little bit hyperbolic, I think. I think everybody kind of recognizes Lumines as a Tetris-like puzzle game from like the PSP. Or at least that's where I remember it from. Specifically was the PlayStation Portable a long time ago. It's been dormant for a good while now, about probably 5 to 7 years. I'd have to go back and check when the last Lumines game was. But Lumines Arise is from the same guy who did Tetris Effect. Tetris Effect being the kind of psychedelic music rhythm-based Tetris game that came out a while back. Very, very popular game. Very, very well-reviewed, very successful in and of its own right. Tetris in and of itself is incredibly accessible and, well-beloved game that really appeals to a lot of people very easily. I am no good at Tetris, and therefore, when I played Tetris Effect, I could never get past the first stage, or get very far past the first stage, and therefore, I didn't really get Tetris Effect as much as everybody else. I played the demo for the game, and I was like, I like the music, I like the design behind it, I like the idea, I like what we're going for here. I just suck at Tetris. Like, if I put more time into Tetris, I'm sure it would click, and it would be like a lot better. I'm dumb. I cannot do puzzles. I don't love puzzle games, so I don't put a lot of time into them. And so, Tetris Effect kind of passed me by, and I said, I get it, I respect it, but I don't love it personally. And then Lumines Arise seems very, very similar. Obviously, the same director, like I said, and I think this is going to be another big hit. Lumines was a very popular, well-respected puzzle game of the time, and I think this is a perfect combo for it. Lumines was always kind of music-based as well, so I look forward to seeing how people who like Tetris Effect like this game, and I'm sure it'll get a lot more people eyes on Lumines as a game in general. So very cool announcement to start this conference off, or this showcase, I suppose. Conference is a bit of a big word. I'm just used to it for this E3 time, so forgive me. Next up, Pragmata from Capcom. So this was a game that was initially revealed in 2020, and then went dark in 2022 because it just needed a lot of time. And what it looks like is this game had to have been completely rebooted. Like it's been so long. It's been 3 years, and now they're confirming it's a 2020, I believe 2026 game. This game cooked for another 5 years, or excuse me, 4 years. I think that's what that says to me is we freaking started over, which is interesting. This game shows off a little bit of gameplay, a little bit more of the game. Still not a huge trailer, still not a lot to go off of, but what kind of initially was revealed is more of like a horror sci-fi kind of game. Now it just looks like kind of more of an action-y shooter sci-fi game. And I don't know. I can't say I'm like sold on it yet. I need to know more about literally everything. I mean, this is more or less just a proof of life. It's very funny because when the game was last shown, it was a delay trailer, just straight up saying, hey, sorry about that. We're delaying the game a lot longer than we thought we were. And this trailer actually recognized that and, made a reference to that particular trailer, which is fairly comical to me. A lot of people are looking forward to this because it's Capcom. At this point, Capcom is going through a golden era. Everything they do is gold. And so I think people are just looking at this as like, well, this is another Capcom game. It's going to be good. And maybe is kind of where I'm at with that. I point to Exoprimal as another Capcom game that came out recently that did not perform very well in almost every regard, critically and commercially. So like Capcom is not like infallible. Like they can make mistakes, and clearly this is a game that's had a troubled development and has still issues, I'm assuming. So I don't know. I need to see more about Pragmata. From what I'm seeing so far, again, I do trust Capcom to an extent. I'm just saying I just don't trust them wholly. So, like, I do trust them enough to say, I have an eye on this. I'm certainly willing to see more, and I hope it will be a great game. Next up, Romeo is a Dead Man. This was a very fun trailer, very in-your-face, very wacky. Started off in like a rotoscope art style and then transitions into hardcore rock and roll, like killing zombies across time. If you haven't heard of what this game is about, I highly encourage you to go and like look up a summary online. It is a Suda51 game, which is very funny because I just saw Suda51 at MomoCon in Atlanta, Georgia. And he announced another game that he's working with in conjunction with Swery, and I was like, oh, like that must just be what he's working on right now because he hasn't really put out anything since No More Heroes 3, which was about 5 years ago. So it's been a long time since they've done anything. Grasshopper Manufacturer, his studio specifically, and here we are with Romeo is a Dead Man. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I kind of figured it was a Suda51 game just based on the tone and the vibe and the art style and all that. Like, it definitely looked like it, but I was like, I thought that he was working on, the other game with Swery. So I was like, okay, Hotel Barcelona. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess not. I guess he's doing both at the same time, which makes sense because Hotel Barcelona is primarily being developed by Swery's studio, so it makes a whole lot more sense that, frickin' Suda51 is doing his own thing with his own studio. But anyway, Romeo's a Dead Man looks crazy, it looks insane. This is a game / a studio that clearly survives and thrives off of the rule of cool. Like, it doesn't matter, like, what is going on. It's, as long as it's crazy and in your face and action-packed and just wacko, that's all that matters. And, like, admittedly, there is certainly an appeal to that. The problem is, and I've said this in my last episode, funny enough, Suda51 games typically are not fun to play. They are really awesome in terms of concept and, like, again, the rule of cool. They're definitely interesting from, like, a bullet-pointed perspective, but when you actually sit down and play them, they're typically pretty janky. Combat's not very satisfying. There's a lot of weird design decisions that typically don't make the game particularly fun to play. I hold my judgment that, or I think it's not even hold a judgment. I think that Romeo is a Dead Man is going to be the same. Just because they took more time with this game. I mean, like, they have such a history with producing games like that. I can't imagine things have changed at that studio. So, like, this is probably another game that is going to be freaking rad, but not super fun to play. So that's my assessment. Okay. I think the trailer was awesome. I'm certainly going to check it out eventually, but I'm not paying full price for this because I know it's going to suck. I know it's probably going to be a 75 on Metacritic or something like the 78. And, like, people are going to be like, yeah, it was really cool, but X, Y, and Z sucked because it wasn't fun to play. And it was like, yeah, okay. So anyway, Romeo's a Dead Man. Honestly, one of my highlights from the show. But like I said, I am skeptical in the studio as a whole in terms of its design decisions. So we'll see. Next up, Konami shows up and shows off Silent Hill F, which, of course, had already been revealed at a Konami showcase a while back. But now they're showing off actual gameplay of it, a little bit more of a deep dive into actually what you're going to see from moment to moment within the game. You're playing as a little schoolgirl in Japan, which is, a friend of mine is very into Silent Hill, and he pointed out, oh yeah, this is the first Silent Hill that's actually taken place in, like, the East. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. I didn't even think about that, which is really cool. And you really get that vibe, like the Grudge horror vibe, you know, that this game is definitely presenting. Enemies looked really cool. It seems to be focusing on melee combat. And, like, yeah, it seemed like a scary Silent Hill game. They've come out and confirmed, yep, we're pretty much making another Silent Hill game. It's going to have puzzles. Emotional and psychological trauma bleeds into the themes in the world. So, it's a Silent Hill game, but with a little schoolgirl as the protagonist and in Japan, which is, interesting for sure. Again, I don't think we know enough about this game yet to see if it's actually going to be fun. And this is going to be a big recurring theme throughout this podcast, is me saying, oh yeah, this game looks cool. Will it be fun? I have doubts. It's a possibility this game could suck. But, again, we don't know. But from what I saw, this was actually a pretty impressive trailer. And I'm pretty interested to see how people receive this one. Obviously, it's the first Silent Hill game coming out in a long time that's not a remake of one of considered to be the greatest games of all time. So there's no blueprint to try and making it good. I recently talked about Silent Hill 2 and my impressions on that game on the podcast, and I pretty much was like, yeah, this game's cool, but, like, what really makes it good is, like, the story and, like, the ending, and, like, really that's, like, was the coolest moment of the game by far. And, like, everything else in the game is fine, but, like, that moment really sets it apart as, like, being a really special game. It's hard to say if this game will have that, because we don't have the same people working on it, and we don't have, it's a different Konami now. It's a different Konami. So we'll see. Silent Hill F, another big name, dropped during this particular conference. Ironically enough, another game showed up, Bloodstained, The Scarlet Engagement was next, which was the next game in the Bloodstained franchise, the sequel to the Kickstarted game by the creator of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's just very funny that they placed this after Silent Hill because they're both Konami properties, or Castlevania is, which is what Bloodstained is based on. And I actually thought this was another Konami game. I thought it was another Castlevania. I thought that straight up they were announcing, because it was a Silent Hill game that had just been announced, I was like, oh, this is the Konami block. And it was like, oh, it's another Castlevania game. Legit thought that. And nope, it's just the game that they refused to make. This is, I played the original Bloodstained, and I enjoyed it. It didn't blow me away. I played Symphony of the Night as well, way after it came out, I guess recently, comparative to when it released, and loved Symphony of the Night. It's clear to me why that game is considered like a greatest of all time game. Bloodstained, it was a little jank. If you didn't know, it's a Kickstarter game. It was developed by multiple studios trying to kind of piece it together. And, you know, like, it came across to me as like this game could have been something amazing, but it just didn't have the money and it didn't have the support. And what I see here with Bloodstained, the Scarlet Engagement, is a chance to really kick that production value and maybe tweak it up a notch, you know, which is what I'm hoping here. We didn't really see any gameplay or anything. It was just kind of showing off the game, that it exists and it will be here sooner rather than later. So very cool to see that here as well. Next up, Digimon Storytime Stranger, or Digimon Story Time Stranger. When I say it like that, it makes it sound like it's like a picture book. But Digimon Story Time Stranger is another game that's already been announced. It is just kind of a more in-depth look of it. It looked kind of more like a story trailer. Apparently, people are really psyched for this freaking game. Like, I don't know what it is, because I didn't know there were that many Digimon fans still out there. Like, I know Pokemon is rip-roaring and ready to go. Like, everybody still loves Pokemon. Doesn't matter if you're a kid or an adult who grew up with it. Like, you still love Pokemon for the most part. There's still a lot of very avid Pokemon fans out there. Digimon, you don't freaking hear about that. Like, those mother effers are closeted. You know, they are just hiding away, hoping one day that they can show up and see something worth celebrating within this childhood IP they've been watching for years. And I guess these Digimon RPGs are it. The problem with that is a lot of these Digimon RPGs like haven't been great. Like, they've been fine, but like they haven't been great. So this one looks like it has a lot of production value behind it. I probably won't be playing it. And I always was like somebody who wanted to like Digimon more as a kid. I actually tried to watch Digimon as a kid, but I didn't have cable. And like Digimon actually started airing. Fox was one of the 6 channels I had as a kid. It used to have a block of cartoons on Saturdays, and Digimon was one of them. And then like after like season 1, I don't even think it was season 1. It was like probably like 10 episodes. They moved that to a cable channel that they had that Fox owned. I don't know what the frick it was because I didn't have cable, but they moved it and I couldn't get a hold of it anymore. And I thought Digimon was freaking cool as a kid. So I was like, dang, well, I guess I'm not watching this show anymore. So like I've always had that itch of like, well, dang, I bet you I would have been really freaking into Digimon if I could actually have watched it. But anyway, I don't know why people are like, this is the game to get people hyped, but like people are clearly excited for this freaking game, and I wish them the best. It looks like another anime RPG to me, and right now I'm just kind of drowning in those. So like I have no interest in touching this anytime soon. If this is like some 90 plus on Metacritic, I'll get around to it, but like I think it's highly unlikely. Like eventually this game will be a free PlayStation Plus game and I'll just play it then. But anyway, moving on. FF Tactics, or Final Fantasy Tactics Remake. That's right. This was a game that was leaked years ago in the NVIDIA leak. It's one that everybody's kind of been wondering what the heck has been going on with, because we know the NVIDIA leak is legit. This is probably like my most anticipated game of the showcase. I've always wanted to play Final Fantasy Tactics. I've just not had a great reason to. And this is the reason. They are really giving it a great treatment here, it looks like. Obviously updated textures and resolution and all that standard stuff, but they also gave it complete voice acting and some quality of life improvements. There's an easy mode. Apparently that game is supposed to be pretty hard. So, like, as a dude who prefers to not have to deal with super hard difficulty, freaking great. Sign me up. I'll play it on easy. I don't give a frick. So, like, this game is a 100%, I would almost say a day one buy for me, to be quite frank. I'm really looking forward to it. It's just considered a classic game that, like, is supposed to be one of the best tactic games ever made. I think I universally here, the job class system is the best job class system in any game ever. So, very interested in experiencing that. And there's also the original version of the game, also fully accessible to people, just in case you're like, I don't want those quality of life improvements. I don't want that other bullcrap. I just want to experience the game the way it was when I was a little baby. Then you have access to that too, which is actually kind of interesting. You don't normally see that as part of these remakes, but I'll definitely be playing the updated version, no doubt. But super excited for that. Moving on. Baby Steps. This is Bennett Foddy's new game, finally getting a release date, and it was delayed. It was supposed to release last year, and it was delayed into this year. Bennett Foddy, the creator of Get Over It and Quap, the viral, like, web flash game that I played as, like, an elementary schooler on the, school computers. He's made another one, and it's Baby Steps, and apparently it has enough backing that Sony is pushing it at these conferences, which is kind of crazy. I'm sure that Get Over It made a butt ton of money. That game went viral out the nose, and anybody would just buy it just to freaking play it for 30 seconds and be like, yeah, this game is really hard and not fun. I got to experience what my favorite internet personality did when they cried and screamed and stuff. Isn't that crazy? And, that's cool. I don't want to play a rage game or a game that is intuitively not fun to play. Baby Steps is a game where you literally are controlling a guy who's, like, walking, and that's, like, the entire game. Is you're walking over, like, difficult terrain, and you're, like, controlling every facet of his legs, so it makes it obviously very easy to make wacky movements or kind of fumble around and fall, and there's a lot of, issues that can arise from that. This looks to be basically Get Over It, but with budget, or Quap, but with, like, a huge budget behind it. And to be frank, this is going to be a big streamer game. Streamers are going to play the frick out of this. There's going to be a lot of, like, LOL XD moments from the game itself and the gameplay. That's just what these games are going to be built on, and it's going to make a lot of money probably because that's going to be a lot of marketing in its favor and so on and so forth. I am not going to touch this game with a 10-foot pole. If it's eventually free or, like, on sale for $2, yeah, sure, why not? My favorite VTuber or something is going to freaking play it, and I'm going to be like, yeah, I'll experience the same thing they did, and that'll be why I pay $2 for it. But I'm not paying full price for this in a million years. I don't need a rage game just to make me mad. Like, if I wanted to do that, I would just play freaking a Souls game and then actually have, like, a good experience at the same time. So, like, no thanks. Definitely staying away from me, for sure. Next up was Hirogami. It is a 3D platformer action game with, like, a paper craft, or what I would say, almost like an origami art style. Interesting. Concerning the name is Hirogami. But yes, it is very short trailer, clearly just demonstrating the art style. We're not really seeing much more from this other than that. Moving on. It looks cool. Moving on. I guess is the best thing I can say about that. Next is Everybody's Golf Hot Shots. These games are being remade. They're notable because they are coming to multiple platforms, specifically the Switch. It's Everybody's Golf. It is a kind of cartoony golf game. I have no interest in golf as a sport or golf games as a game. I'm out. The Karen demo. This is actually pretty interesting, specifically because the demo is getting, I looked at this game initially. This is a rock climbing game, by the way. Kind of a more realistic rock climbing game. And I was like, when I first saw this game released, I was like, this game is clearly not for me. I have no interest in it. No thanks. And pretty much wrote it off immediately. This game has been in a demo version on Steam for a while now, and people are loving it. It is crazy popular. People are getting hours and hours and hours and hours and hours out of just the demo. And all of a sudden, I've perked up a little bit. Like, oh, like this maybe has a little bit wide appeal. Like, perhaps I can be a part of this Karen phenomenon. So I have downloaded the demo, give it a shot. Hopefully, I enjoy it. Or hopefully not. Really, either way, one less game to play is one less game to play, which is honestly a boon in this time and age. But yeah, I mean, the demo being out on PlayStation is really cool. Steam gets demos all the time. PlayStation, not as much. So it's really cool to see that this game is getting some love and attention when it's such an interesting and niche topic or, like game in terms of its subject matter. So interesting to see that. Just wanted to kind of say, like, keep an eye on Karen. It could possibly be a very good game moving forward, even if you weren't interested in it like me from the get-go. Next is Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. It's the 2D action-packed side-scroller Ninja Gaiden game. It looks pretty good. We've seen it a few times. I'm going to move on. Next is Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection with a K. This is like a collection of all Mortal Kombat games, pretty much, like the retro games. And when I say all, I mean like a crazy list, like every single one you can possibly imagine. Even like 32-bit versions of the game, just because, I guess, along with like developer documentation, and it's really meant to be kind of like a historical preservation of a lot of what went into Mortal Kombat. And I love the idea of game preservation. This is how I wish every game was kind of presented in terms of like preserving it and giving it the respect that it deserves. I wish more collections like this existed. Problem is all these collections are more so for people a lot older than me, because I have no nostalgic connection to Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat was very popular and kind of on the rise. I mean, it's still incredibly popular, but like it was really on the rise when I was too young to really even be able to play it. And I'm not talking because of the violence. I mean, like I was a baby when it was very, very like on the cusp of culture, on the tongues of every news anchor saying it would ruin a generation. Which, maybe, I guess, you can make the argument. But anyways, this is really cool. They've made a couple of other collections like this for Atari and a few other things. Really think that they're cool ways of dealing with game preservation, and I really encourage them, even though I won't be playing it because I don't have an attachment to Mortal Kombat. It's really cool to see in general. Next up is this Sony Fight Stick, Sony's own peripheral for a fight stick. This is... I'm not going to say it's because, but it is probably a lot to do with, like, Sony is kind of invested in the fighting game industry in a large way because they own Evo. If you don't remember, Sony bought Evo a while back when it was kind of floundering and struggling with a lot of, like, toxic workplace things. And so Sony just bought it up, and, the idea was Sony will make things right. And who knows if they did. It's really, we don't know, but it was just the assumption of rather assume that than assume that what you love is horrible and toxic and corrupted for all time. So, it is what it is. People gonna believe that. But anyway, I don't care about fighting games. I'm not good at them. You have to put time into them in order to be good at them, and I don't have that or the interest per se at all. It's cool that Sony has their own fight stick. Highly doubt this is going to be like the top-of-the-line fight stick that like every competitor is going to be using in an optimal play setting, but you will likely see it at Evos. People probably be, forced to play with them as part of a promotional thing because Sony owns Evo. I wouldn't be surprised, at least. I have no idea how Evo works. I don't really watch it because, again, I'm not a big fighting game guy. But that's just worth noting. that Sony has their own fight stick now, in case you're interested. Next up was Metal Gear Solid Delta. Really nothing crazy shown here until the very end, which we'll get into in a second. But, this is a 1-for-1 remake, pretty much. So it's not a lot to comment on if you've played the original. I'm 100% playing this game. I love Metal Gear Solid 3, and I cannot wait for this game. You don't need to sell me on it anymore. What they did tease at the end of this trailer was multiplayer. Multiplayer is something that was around in Metal Gear Solid 4. I actually don't think it was in any other Metal Gear games. I'd have to double check that, but like competitive PvP was only in Metal Gear Solid 4. And they kind of used the active camo in this trailer, which is from Metal Gear Solid 4. That's where that originated. And I think the only place you can use it, I'd have to go back and check in 5. I'm sure you can. There's enough stuff in that game you probably can. But Metal Gear Solid Delta is set to be a great game after the Silent Hill 2 remake. And the fact that it is literally just copying one of the greatest games ever made. So, I'll definitely be playing it. And moving on. Nioh 3 is announced. This is a pretty big deal. Nioh is a very popular game from the people who obviously gave you Nioh and last year's Rise of the Ronin, which was a little bit more of a flop, I think, which is a good thing they're going back to Nioh, because Nioh is like the only thing they've made in a while now that has been very successful back to back. It's a Japanese Souls-like, essentially. It is very, very difficult. It is something that I have tried. I played Nioh 2's demo, and I played, at one point, Nioh was free, and I played up until the first boss of Nioh 1, and I got my butt kicked in both of the demos. And funny enough, they actually announced the demo is available right now for Nioh 3, and I was like, yeah, sure, I got nothing better to do. So I booted that up. Booted, and it's more Nioh, baby, and I got my butt kicked. I almost beat the first boss of the demo. I don't know how many there are, but I almost did it on like my third try. Probably could have gotten it in 4, but I was like, I'm not going to play this freaking game. Who am I kidding? I'm not going to play this game. I don't play Souls games. I don't like hard games. Who am I kidding? I'm going to freaking play this game. The funny thing about Nioh, though, is that I actually hear it's really, really good in terms of combat. Its combat is supposed to be really, really great. In this game, you have what looks to be, at least the demo, gives you 2 stances. So a samurai stance and a ninja stance. Ninja's more so kind of agile, beating the frick out of people, dodging, and then kind of trying to hit them from behind. And then samurai is more in your face, beat them to a pulp, and maybe brute force some stuff, kind of combat style. It is a solid game. I mean, like, you really can't argue with it. It's a solid game. And people who like Nioh 1 and 2 and Team Ninja's other games, you're going to like this one, I bet. It's kind of crazy how that works, isn't it? But yeah, I don't think they're really radically changing anything here. It's another Nioh game, and it's going to be a surefire hit. So, moving on. This one made me chuckle a little bit. Thief VR for the PSVR 2. One, it's a Thief game, so it's been a while since we've seen Thief. Thief was brought back a long time ago. I think PlayStation 3. There was a Thief game that was critically and commercially panned. People did not like it very much. Thief obviously goes back a very, very, very long way. It's a very old franchise, obviously about being a thief, stealing things. I think it's from the creator of Deus Ex, Warren Spector. If I remember correctly, I'd have to double check that. But Thief VR for the PlayStation VR 2 is very funny because, one, this is the only PlayStation VR game that is announced at this particular event. Really, I think it's the only PlayStation VR game coming out this year. And 2, it's a Thief game. So, like, a series that really has, I mean, let's be frank, died. It is certainly skulked away into the shadows for a more apt, thematic comparison or analogy. But it is very, who cares? And not only is it a very who cares, it is just another like, oh yeah, I guess Sony did have a PlayStation VR 2 headset. It's kind of crazy how I considered getting one of those a while back, and like, yeah, that was glad I dodged that bullet. There was a state of play happened, which is like Sony's big like, we'll discount our first party stuff for a little while for you to pick it up, kind of event. And they discounted PlayStation VR 2 to $350, and I was like, I have no idea why the frick I would spend $350 on a PlayStation VR 2 when I could get a MetaQuest 3 for like $300. And like, there's actually games still being developed for it. There's so many more features that come along with it. Like, what do you really get when you pick up a PSVR 2? You get Horizon Zero Dawn, the game, the VR game, something in the mountain, I forget, and then you get nothing else. You've seen nothing else from Sony on this. This is, it's so depressing too, because I really love VR as a concept. I think VR is the future. We are nowhere near it breaking into the mainstream yet. It is going to take Facebook, or specifically Meta. Meta is clearly all in on this thing. They are all in on the metaverse, and they're burning billions and billions and probably maybe trillions at some point of dollars into this technology. And I think that once we get there, it will be a massive thing. But like, we have to have one of these companies burning billions of dollars on these devices and R&D and trying to actually make products that people want and can utilize to make it a thing. We're still trying to get there, and it's so blatantly obvious to me that we are nowhere close, and it's depressing. It's depressing because I want VR to be a good thing. I want it to take off, and we just haven't gotten anywhere near that yet. It's very disappointing. And PSVR 2 is like what should have been a huge thing, because Meta is obviously pushing more of a social interaction. Like, you can do a lot more than just play games with the MetaQuest. And PSVR is like, no, bro, this is for gamers. Like, this is a device specifically for playing video games. We're going to build games for it. Like, it is, like, if you want to play VR games and be a VR gamer, this is the headset for you. And this is clearly, I mean, this is such a massive flop in terms of that. It's really unfortunate. So Thief VR, a very underwhelming showing for a very underwhelming peripheral that is so sad, obviously dead. So enough of that. Enough pity partying on the PlayStation VR 2. Next, Tides of Tomorrow from the developers of Road 96. Funny enough, have actually talked about Road 96 on this podcast way after it was released, which is funny because like nobody talks about frickin' Road 96. Road 96 is technically a roguelike story game, narrative choice-based adventure. I love choice-based games. I love narrative-based games. Tides of Tomorrow is one of those games. Here's the twist, which technically Road 96 had a twist as well. As I said, it was a roguelike narrative game, which I have talked about this on the podcast before, but that is like a gross exaggeration of like, and a misleading statement to what Road 96 actually is. And like specifically, Road 96 leads to only one destination, being so many roads, 96 roads, according to the title, which obviously there's not that many in the routes in the main game. That's just a joke. But so many roads in the game, you only have one possible outcome for the game's story. It's really a disappointing narrative in general, very underwhelming. And I didn't think it was a particular, even when you remove the fact that like your choices don't really matter from the game, which is like 99% of like story-based, choice-based games in the first place. Like you then have the disappointing reality that the story and characters aren't really that interesting either. Like I remember talking on the podcast and vividly remembering like this is one of the most mid games I've ever played. Like it's so mid that like I genuinely wish I had not started playing it, or like I had bailed on it way sooner. I beat the game, but like, and it's not even a very long game, but I was like, I have so many games to play. It's really disappointing that I wasted any time on Road 96 because there's just nothing very interesting here. Like it's all fine, but like nothing here is great. Tides of Tomorrow focuses specifically, its twist is it's online. So the choices you make affect other players. Interesting. So in the trailer, we are shown, okay, like this player stole something in their game, and therefore it is not in your game, and so like you can't steal it now. You have to take another route. And then there's another instance where it's like, okay, well, you have these three options. You can do this, this, or this. Well, this player did this. This player did that. Which route do you want to take? Like, based on that information. The second example I just gave, who the frick cares? That is like, I couldn't care less. That, in all honesty, probably all of those decisions won't matter what the frick you do. And two, I don't care what other players specifically did until after I've done that decision, per se. Telltale did it best. You don't need other players to influence your decision specifically. But knowing what other players did is always very interesting to me. So, if I was with the majority or how other players thought, did they make what I consider to be the correct decision, so on and so forth. So, not exactly what I'm seeing here. And then obviously the most interesting example of that is, okay, well, a player's decision is affecting the outcome of your game. So like you have to rely on or react on the fly to something that a player did to affect your game. That almost sounds like Dark Souls, kind of somebody invading your game to like mess up your progression. Like that sounds really cool. And I'd love to see how that plays out. But guess what? Henry, the ever pessimist Henry, I don't think it's actually going to be very interesting at all. That's right. I'm actually pretty down on this idea. I don't think this developer is talented enough to pull it off in its grandiose nature. I think that this could be an amazing idea, very, very thoughtful idea, just like, say, a roguelike narrative adventure game is a really cool idea. I think this is an even cooler idea, but do I trust this developer to fully flesh it out and to fully realize it? Absolutely freaking not. Not after playing Road 96. I cannot believe that this game is going to be amazing. And after playing many, many, many narrative adventure choice-based games, guess what? I don't think that these choices will ultimately matter very much. Will I probably play this game? Yeah, sure. I probably will because I'm a sucker for this genre. But I don't know what the story really is yet. This narrative, I don't know the narrative. I don't even know what the narrative is. If it was detailed in the game, or the trailer, I genuinely don't remember it. Because I was way more interested in the mechanics behind the game and thinking of the possibilities behind that than whatever the frick people were talking about. So we'll see if that actually has any kind of bearing. I don't think it will. But Tides of Tomorrow, we'll see. We're honestly going way longer than I'd like at this point, so we got to speed things up. Next, Astrobot getting more levels. How do they keep doing this? Just make another game. Moving on. What a great game. Stop making more of it and just make more of it. Anyway, Sea of Remnants is next. I wrote this down as a crazy, colorful-looking game, and I had to figure out what the frick it was because there was so much going on that I really had no freaking idea what even kind of game it actually was, like what genre it was. And the developers write it as, quote, an ocean adventure RPG / simulation / survival building / turn-based strategy game. Interesting. So obviously it is a pirate game. You're playing as pirates, apparently building things, apparently adventuring on the high seas, and apparently doing turn-based combat. The art style looks really cool, very wonderful and colorful, whimsical. It definitely caught my eye. I need to see how all this blends together. Right now I see 4 different games that I'd love to see how that blends together, but I mean, like, there's so much that could go wrong here and so much that could go right. I really need to see the final product, or more of the product, I suppose. But a really strong initial showing that got my eyes on it and got my interest peaked, which is very important in this day and age. So very strong showing there. Sword of the Sea. This is from the Abzu and Pathless developers, or as they will probably likely want you to, the creators of Journey. Create Journey, behind the people from Journey. Journey, because no one cares about Abzu or the Pathless. They only care about Journey. And this is not from the guy who did Journey. He's just from the same studio that did Journey. There are some devs that worked on Journey here, but like this is not like the main guy behind Journey, and that's possibly maybe why Abzu and the Pathless weren't as successful as Journey. Crazy, right? But Sword of the Sea is very much looks like Journey. Funny enough, it's you're a guy surfing on a sword in the desert. So going through dunes, very similarly to Journey, the critically acclaimed like game that made indie games super successful outside of, I guess, Braid, that made them like art pieces, I suppose was a bit more of an accurate statement. But the movement in this game actually looks pretty solid. I like the movement in Journey a lot, and it looks like this is really doubling down on that and making it really interesting to move around and surf over dunes on a sword. And I'm actually really interested to play this game now because of that, because I love a good flow state with movement. I mean, I that's rad. And funny enough, I don't have to wait that long. This game is a day one PlayStation Plus extra game, which I am a member of that tier, so I will have access to it the day it releases for free. So I'm very happy about that. But we will see more of that in due time. Next up, Ghost of Yotei was kind of shown off a little bit. There's like a little wolf man, not a wolf man, but a little wolf, and she was like growling. And it's like, okay, we're going to show more of this later. Ghost of Yotei is going to get its own individual event, similar to how Death Stranding got its own event earlier today on a Monday. So good for them. I can't wait to see this game. I don't know if I'm going to watch that direct because I'm going to play this game no matter what. Sucker Punch is my favorite developer of all time. They have made my favorite game ever, favorite series ever, Sly Cooper, and very nostalgic heart moment for me. And they also made Infamous, which I really love, and they also made Ghost of Tsushima, which is a great game too. So I'm highly looking forward to this, even though I'm not as interested because I really don't. I would really love to make like another game like Infamous or Sly Cooper, a little bit more toned back, smaller scale, because this is just screams to me like Assassin's Creed open world game, clearing check marks off a map, and I just really don't want to put the time into a game like that. Like, this is easily going to be another 60 hours. I think I did put like 60 hours into Ghost of Tsushima, so like there's no way this is going to be any smaller. So like, yeah, I'm kind of bearing for that, and a little Little sad that much time is going to be put into it, but I know I'm going to have a good time at the same time. So it is what it is. But yeah, nothing to really say about that other than that. Moving on to the finisher of the conference, the big wow moment, which was not a big wow moment for me, but it was a big wow moment for a lot of people, and I completely understand why. Arc System Works announces, in conjunction with Sony, Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, which is a Marvel 4v4 fighting game by Arc System Works. So Arc System Works, obviously the guys who do all these big fighting games, anime-style fighting games. You will easily know them from Guilty Gear is their big mainstay. They did the recent Dragon Ball fighting game, which a lot of people really thought was good. They do a lot of fighting games. Like, they crank them out a lot. For what people make sound like is one of the most complicated games to develop, these guys push them out like they are rabbits, man. Just popping them out left and right. And this one is obviously a big deal because it's using the Marvel IP. And it looked really cool. That being said, it's a fighting game, and I'm not going to be good at it, and I'm not going to play it because I'm going to have to get good at it in order to have fun, and I don't want to have to do that. So, yeah. That being said, I do recognize why this was the finisher here. It is clearly a big deal. And like I said, Sony owns Evo, so this is 100% going to be an Evo game, and we will certainly be seeing more of it in the future from Sony and from pretty much everybody. This game is, I would think, going to be fairly successful, or should I say very successful. So that is the big wow factor. Unfortunately, I can't get too hyped for it, like I said, and I can't say too much about it because I am not a fighting game guy. So, I am willfully and blissfully ignorant to the fighting game scene. So, that being said, that wraps up our Sony press conference for this summer. And overall, it was pretty good. It was pretty tight, had a lot of great games in it, and several announcements that really appealed to me. It's a very hardcore general gamer crowd conference. A lot of Japanese inspiration here, or a lot of Japanese games in general. So there's a lot here to love, and a lot here to like. And while there was nothing that really blew me away here personally, it's hard for me to say this was a bad press conference. Maybe I'm a little biased towards Sony, but I do think that this was pretty good to my tastes. And I'd probably give it a B minus, something like that. It was honestly pretty solid. It was pretty solid, right on there. Definitely not a waste of my time. Definitely enjoyed it. And it really kind of set me up to kind of wet my mouth, whet my expectations, make me salivate for what was to come with Summer Games Fest and Microsoft in the coming days, which, as I've already kind of alluded to, didn't really come to fruition. But I do shout out to Cam, who's not listening to this, but you know what? I still think of you, buddy. A stud and a dud is something one of our co-hosts introduced. A favorite game that I had here and a least favorite game. I already kind of spoiled my favorite. It's Final Fantasy Tactics Remake, so that's the one that I'm looking forward to the most. And it feels like a kind of cop-out because it's a remake. But it's a remake of a game that I've never played, I guess, if that's, worth mentioning, I suppose. But the dud, however, is a lot harder to pinpoint because there's not anything bad here. There's really not anything bad here. If I really had to put a no shot, I don't like that game, I'm not going to even play that game or enjoy that game, it would have to be baby steps. And I get why it's there, and I understand the audience of who's it for, and I get why people are excited for it and why it's at a Sony conference. So I really can't look at anything here and be like, yeah, that sucks. Like, you know, like, I really don't like that. You know, like it may not be for me, but like I can't objectively say anything here is bad. So that's why I have to say, like, this is like a really solid conference. And moving on. Okay, so we are an hour in, and we have only talked about one of the showcases so far. So we are moving, and I thought I was moving pretty fast. So we're going to get right into it. Summer Games Fest with Geoff Keighley, our Lord and Savior. Like I said, not very impressive showing here. Really, only one big mic drop moment, and it was kind of dulled, I would say. We'll get into it. But, you know, it was very obvious to me that this showcase was going to be not so great very quickly because, you know, Geoff Keighley opened the showcase off with like, oh, you know, we really love the ability to showcase smaller games that, you know, not as many people would have known about otherwise, and that's kind of what we really want to do with this showcase. I was like, interesting, Geoff Keighley, because that's exactly what made this showcase so popular, was not, you know, debuting Elden Ring for the first time. It was showing off some indie game nobody had ever heard of that ended up selling 100,000 copies, you know, on a good day or something like, you know, or throughout its lifetime, you know, or something like that. You know, like, duh, like what makes this show successful and what makes people freaking tune in is definitely these big, massive AAA reveals. Like that's what makes this a successful showcase. And he's like, well, we kind of want to focus on little tiny things. And it's like, okay, that's kind of foreboding. Okay. And then the opener, the big opening game. And what I like to say is you really want to have a big splash at the beginning to reel people in, that hook, you know? And then maybe midway through the presentation, you kind of want to have another kind of decent splash. Be like, okay, here's your like, don't leave us, stay awake, like we have things coming. And then at the end, you want that big mic drop moment. Really, Summer Games Fest this year only had the big mic drop moment at the end because the game showcase opened with Mortal Shell 2. If you aren't familiar, Mortal Shell is a Souls-like game. It was an indie Souls-like game that kind of popped off, got a lot of attention for reasons I don't even remember. I played it at one point. It was a free PlayStation Plus game. I think I got through the first area, and I was like, yeah, this is definitely not for me. It's another Souls-like game, and I don't even think it's like a particularly great Souls-like game. This looks like more Mortal Shell 2, you know, Mortal Shell. You know, it's really didn't blow me away. And like I can't imagine it blew anyone else away. Especially, I mean, like I feel like Mortal Shell was always like one of the C tier, if not D tier, Souls-like clones that were out there. And this is like, who really cares that the sequel is coming out other than people who really, 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 really liked Mortal Shell and who really, really, really liked Mortal Shell? Like, there are just people who are like, well, this was a good Souls-like to keep me entertained while I'm waiting for other Souls-likes. Like, that's really all I kind of see from Mortal Shell. So, kind of a whimper of an opening into Chronicles Medieval, which is a game from a studio I don't know. They didn't really show that off. The gameplay, they didn't really show that off. It is a medieval times RTS game for the PC. The big hook here is Tom Hardy, who you may know as Venom from the Venom movies, is the narrator. And that is its claim to fame. Could not recognize that man's voice from the narration. I guess that was the intent, was to be like, there is Hollywood presence at this particular presentation, and like that's why it was put so close to the front. Otherwise, this looks really, like, I was like, why are we focusing on, why is this the second game we're showing at this showcase? Like, we really could do better. And like, that will be a recurring theme of like, yeah, Hollywood is here. Isn't that really cool? Which, you know, we'll get to in a bit. Next up was Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. This was revealed a while back, but what essentially they're doing with this game is they're like, hey, this is basically our Smash Bros. Like, we're going to put a bunch of characters in this game. Here's a reveal of 3 of them to show you, like, we have some interesting, like, IP that we're going to pull from and put in here. And, you know, like, we have more in the future. Stick around. This also becomes a recurring theme. It is admittedly a really good marketing strategy to be like, we have a lot of characters in this game. Stick around and wait to see, like, Smash Brothers. You know, like, each character is going to be an event that we kind of showcase at some point. This one, they show off Hatsune Miku, which is a Vocaloid, a robot singer, if you aren't familiar, Joker from Persona 5, or the protagonist, and Ichiban Kasuga from Like a Dragon, or Yakuza 7, which obviously are IP that are heavily associated with Sega. The reason I say heavily associated is I don't think Sega owns Hatsune Miku. They do own, obviously, Persona and Yakuza. So or they at least publish them. And then they publish the Hatsune Miku rhythm games, is how that's kind of associated with Sega in a way. But the Sonic racing games are actually pretty fun kart racers. Like, they're actually pretty freaking solid. And it's honestly surprising to me that, like, Mario Kart gets so much praise, but the Sonic racing games don't. Because they're genuinely, like, solid kart racers, very colorful, very fun, you know, just like Mario Kart. You know, it's just, it isn't Mario, it's Sonic. And I think this is setting up to be another big one, or another good one at the very least, and having some really interesting rosters to pull from. The previous Sonic racing games had, like, with the monkey from that, what the frick is that game? The rhythm game that they produced that has the monkey with the maracas. He's a playable character in the previous Sonic racing games. Ooh La La from Space Channel 5 is a drivable racer in the previous game. So most likely you will see those characters return to this roster. But this was supposed to be a big splash, so it's 3 new racers. And then obviously Kiryu from the previous Yakuza games was a drivable racer instead of Ichiban. So that's out September 25th. I have a friend who really likes Sonic racing, so I'm sure he's stoked. But moving on, this was something that I found interesting that we were showing this off here. I almost immediately recognized it as Code Vein 2. Code Vein is another Souls-like game. It is known as the anime Souls-like. So you are an anime character in kind of a Souls-like kind of place, and it's Souls-like mechanics, and that's the hook, is you're an anime character. And it was exactly the same. It was the trailer was like, here's an anime character in this weird grimoire setting, and it's like, oh, yeah, well, only one game really does that, and that's Code Vein, so there you go. And yep, it looked like cinematic trailer for Code Vein 2. I don't really care about Souls-likes. I played Code Vein a little bit. It was a free PlayStation Plus game at some point, and yeah, it was another Souls-like. It's fine. It's another, again, if you want another Souls-like to sink your teeth into, it is another one. So if you wanted more Code Vein, here it is. Again, like, we just have enough Souls-likes out there that you really have to do something to differentiate yourself other than here is a Souls-like with an anime character in it. Like, that just is, I don't know if that's enough anymore. But maybe the first game had enough of a following that they're willing to pick up the second one still. I don't know, but I'm not. Have no intent unless it's free. I'll pop into it for like an hour and then never touch it again. Next, End of Abyss was an interesting looking little sci-fi isometric horror game. It kind of looked like enemies kind of split and multiply as you shoot them, maybe like fall off of each other. Looked like the physics in the game is pretty interesting. Yeah, it looked interesting. There's really not much to say about it in general without, like, just kind of what we're seeing here. It's just kind of looks, kind of like a Little Nightmares-esque, not a side-scroller, but isometric, kind of same horror-ish vibe in space. So, yeah, I mean, that looked interesting. Again, I can't tell anything from what I've seen if it's actually a good game, but Unlike this next game, Mouse PI for Hire, which of course has been announced and talked about prior. The big reveal here is Troy Baker, which we all know as one of the biggest voice actors, or actors, I guess, in general, for video games, will be the lead. He will be the mouse in Mouse PI for Hire. You will know him majorly as Joel from The Last of Us, Booker DeWitt from BioShock Infinite, and many other roles in which he is very prominent. Kind of an interesting get for a game like this, and I think that's why that was like the big, announcement for this. What really actually intrigued me is this trailer looked a lot more impressive than I gave it credit for. Previous gameplay footage I've seen of this game, if you didn't know, this is a first-person, like, Steamboat Mickey art style kind of game, where you're playing as a mouse PI, obviously, and, going through a black and white world and kind of using cartoony weapons and animations to fight other cartoons. I just thought it was like a boomer shooter, I thought this was like Doom on the PC in 1992, like that's the kind of game I assumed this was, and it's not that. It is like, it clearly has a lot more going on than I initially gave it credit for, and I was kind of surprised by that, and it actually piqued my interest. I looked at this game initially as like it could be cool, and then like, I appreciate the art style at least, and to being like, oh, no, there's actually a lot more going on in this game than I initially gave it credit for. I think this could actually be a solid full game that's not just like a boomer shooter doing its own thing. So, very excited for Mouse PI for Hire now, and it is not because of Troy Baker. It is actually just because the game looks cool. Next up, Game of Thrones, War for Westeros. It's an RTS game for the PC. This is inevitable. I mean, like, how we didn't, do we already have one of these? I genuinely don't know. If not, it was inevitable. This was going to happen. It was a full cinematic trailer. I knew exactly what it was when it first started, because it was a full cinematic trailer. There's admittedly a couple of other Game of Thrones games in development, but like, given the subject matter and what we were seeing and how there was no dialogue and all that, I was like, this is an RTS game. Like, this is what we're going to see here. And yep, that is exactly what it was, an RTS game with Game of Thrones. Again, no gameplay, fully cinematic trailer, so nothing real to see here. Just, you can expect it at some point in the future. Next up, an actual interesting, more interesting announcement, Atomic Heart 2. The trailer looked pretty cool. The problem is, I didn't love Atomic Heart. I know Atomic Heart is one of those games that, like, you really loved it or you thought it was okay. Like, I don't think anybody hated Atomic Heart, but it is definitely divisive of whether that game is, like, fine or, like, great. And I actually have a friend who really likes it. I played it until, like, 15 minutes outside of where you get access to, like, the open world, quote unquote, area of the game. And, I was like, yeah, I got other stuff to play. And this game really hasn't hooked me. I'm good. And I bailed. Atomic Heart 2's trailer looked pretty action-packed, pretty bonkers. Looked like it had a lot going on. And I wouldn't be surprised if, there's a lot more money into this now, a lot more attention being put into this than the original, considering the original was somewhat successful. So it's definitely something to keep your eye on. What was even more interesting is that they immediately announced afterwards The Cube, from the same studio and set in the Atomic Heart universe. They didn't really say much about it in the game. It was just a cinematic trailer, but it is a Atomic Heart universe game, which I found to be the most interesting thing about it. Is like, clearly Atomic Heart did well enough that they were like, we need to make a lot of Atomic Heart games. Like, don't make just one, make a lot of them. Not only is it an Atomic Heart game, it is an MMORPG, which, like, immediately made me go, like, I'm out. I had to do a little digging on that, but it's an MMORPG. I'm like, nope, I ain't about that. I don't want to have anything to do with an MMORPG. It's not my genre, not my style of game. I'm out of here. So just interesting in general to me that, like, Atomic Heart apparently did well enough to to warrant a franchise of not just numbered sequels, but like complete spin-offs and genre pivots. Like that's kind of insane to me, based on, again, like how the initial game was like this is okay or good. Like there's really nobody who was like it just seemed like a little bit more of a mixed reception to that game to double down on it so significantly. Next is one of my favorite games of the show, to be quite frank, and that is Felt That Boxing. It is an Unreal Engine 5 puppet Punch-Out clone. So the trailer itself is pretty much, it looks like real freaking puppets, all done in Unreal Engine 5. It looks like real freaking puppets, and they're freaking punching each other, and it's clearly got a very big sense of humor, and I think it looks incredibly awesome in terms of just the concept and the art style, and, you know, like, just how it treats itself with such a sense of humor and the ideas behind it. I don't think Punch-Out games or Punch-Out clones are particularly fun. They are memorization games. They are muscle memory games, which is, you know, they're fine. It's just not my kind of game. I've played Punch-Out games before. I got really into a Punch-Out game clone at one point, and I was like, yeah, I think this is all I ever need from this genre. And I kind of walked away from it, and I was like, yeah, that's all I needed. And here is like, I still look at this, I'm like, yeah, that's really all I needed from this genre. But in terms of this, I think at some point I definitely got to touch this game, you know? Like it'll eventually be some free PlayStation Plus game or something like that, and I'm definitely gonna give it a shot. Like I definitely think this game, in terms of its art style, really sold me. And in terms of its like sense of humor, I love a good game with a sense of humor. So moving on, there's not much else to really say about it. Punch-Out clones, you really can't say a whole lot. Next is Killer In. This is a Square Enix-backed social deduction game, or as some or most people would recognize it as, an Among Us clone. So this one kind of, this one's piqued my interest for a reason, but not a very good one, okay? So I like social deduction games. I think they're fun. I'm not good at them, and I don't have the friends to play with them. But if you are a fan of the podcast for a while and you've been listening to everything I've ever said, you will know that I had a lot of fun recently with the Death Note game. It actually even made, I gave it an award for like biggest surprise or something like that for me, or something, one of those awards for in my Game of the Year podcast episode. I had so much fun with it, and I just thought it was going to be an absolute piece of garbage game, but I genuinely think that it was a well-designed game, and I also think that, you know, I enjoy social deduction games, so like that's probably why. I just never play them. Because really, you're kind of dominated by Among Us clones out there for that kind of a deal. And by Among Us clones, I mean Among Us or Among Us VR. Those are your two games that you can play if you want to play a social deduction game. Killer In looks to be a lot more in-depth. You are collecting loot. You are putting on armor to protect yourself, collecting weapons to fight what you would call like an invader or an alien or whatever. They call them wolves. And the sheep are obviously trying to build up their arsenal to defend themselves against the wolves or to kill them, and also they're trying to escape this labyrinth by solving a bunch of puzzles or clues or whatever the case is. It's not entirely delved into. And then obviously the wolves are trying to sabotage them and kill them with this loot. So it's an interesting take on the formula. The problem I have with this is there was another PlayStation Plus game that came out that was a social deduction game this year, and it kind of followed a very similar methodology. Not necessarily this, like, you get loot and you frickin' kill people. You know, it basically turns it into a first-person shooter in a way, or a third-person shooter in this case. But, like, it was another game that was a social deduction game that you kind of had to work together in a lot of ways, and you know, it was a lot more in depth than Among Us. Oh my! And in this case, it completely flopped. I don't know anybody who played it. It was a free PlayStation Plus game. They were really banking that like the player base would get hooked off of the free hit that they got from PlayStation Plus, and I don't think it happened. I think that game came out and immediately died. And like I see this as a game that looks very similar to that. I would look at that game's performance, and I would immediately be skeptical in Killer In. Very, very interested to see how this performs. I mean, sometimes a game comes out, it's just got that magic sauce, or it just gets lucky, and you can get away with that. But like, I don't know. Like, after seeing so many of these games try to come out and be like, we can be Among Us but better, and then you just can't compete with the simplicity and the player base and the virality that Among Us has. It's interesting to see how another competitor in the space will try and fare. So I'll be keeping an eye on Killer In, not to play, but to see how it works. Because I don't want to put money... I would never put money down on a game like this, an online-only game that I don't anticipate doing well. Because if I buy a game for $20 and I play it for a weekend, that's all I'll probably ever get out of it, because the player base will die like immediately. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put money on this game, until I've known for a fact people like it and people want to stick around and play for a long period of time. So it's a real live or die situation for this game, I think. But moving on, Arc Raiders gets a release date. Arc Raiders is a game that I know nothing about, but apparently everybody loves. It's an extraction shooter that is basically like proof that the genre will work. But apparently Marathon is doomed, and it's the exact same. So anyways, Arc Raiders, a lot of people looking forward to that. I need to do more research on it. Wish I had more time before the podcast to kind of get an idea of it, but I don't know nothing about it. I just know it's going to be a big hit when it comes out, and that's for October 30th, which we have a lot of games apparently coming out around October 30th. So good luck there. I think it'll do fine though, based on what I've heard. Out of Words. This was a game that was primarily shown off because it looks real pretty. It is a fully stop-motion art style game. So everything in the game is handcrafted and made via stop motion. It looks very cool. I love stop motion art style. Even though Tim Burton kind of ruined it for me and kind of creeps me out, just in lieu of the fact that, he is, creepy. So I just associate stop motion with creepiness because of him, and like having sex with corpses, because that was a movie that he made in stop motion. But anyway, this is a co-op not an action platformer. Really, it looks more like a puzzle platformer. We did not get to see a whole lot of gameplay here. Kind of gave me Split Fiction vibes in a way. Probably going to be nowhere near as good as Split Fiction, and probably going to be nowhere near as complex and in-depth as Split Fiction. But this is kind of one of those things. It's like you're buying the game for its art style. Kind of like how Felt That Boxing I was just talking about was like, I really like this game for its art style, and I don't think I'll like it for the gameplay, but the art style is really cool. And sometimes an art style is just that. It's really the only thing you give a frick about the game for. It's sad that some games actually are successful off of an art style and they're not actually good games, but in some games that are actually fun and don't have a good art style, like, are forgotten and never played. But this is a game that clearly has made it off of its art style. Have no idea if this game is fun. Could not tell you. If anything, I would actually venture towards no. It's probably not going to be a great game, but it will have a great art style, and people will like it for that. But again, very cool art style. Very much appreciated looking at it. Don't know if I would appreciate playing it, but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Liza P. Overture DLC. This has been leaked for a while. Dropped the same day as the announcement, which is pretty cool for people who like Liza P. One of those Souls-like games that really stood out and people really dug. Unlike the other two Souls games I've talked about, I think this one was a much bigger success. Very cool for people who wanted more of it. This DLC also adds like difficulty options to the game, which weren't originally there. So it actually makes the game a lot more appealing to a guy like me who doesn't want a hard game and would rather just blast through it and be a god. But anyway, cool for those people. Next was Onimusha, Way of the Sword. There was another trailer for it. It showed nothing particularly interesting. Some people were like, oh, it's a more in-depth gameplay showing. Bro, no, there has been gameplay showing of this. You haven't seen it apparently if you're saying that, where they do like an actual in-depth showing of the game's combat in way more of an in-depth showing than this. Very brief. I think it just shows off kind of the antagonist a little bit, and again, very briefly there. It's really not worth talking about, to be quite honest. And moving on. Next up was Fractured Blooms. Fractured Blooms hooked me with the description that Geoff Keighley gave, which was, quote, Doki Doki Literature Club meets Silent Hill, which is definitely an interesting catchphrase, marketing slogan, whatever you want to say. Doki Doki Literature Club, I've talked on the podcast before, I really enjoy, and it is really good at subverting expectations, taking a genre and making you think one thing and then flipping it on its head and making it kind of messed up and crazy. Basically subverting expectations. And I love that. We have enough video games now that you can definitely have an established formula for a genre, and you can definitely subvert them now. We are not experimenting with a lot of them anymore. So this one looks like a farming sim that kind of just becomes a horror game. I honestly was not sold on the gameplay. While Doki Doki Literature Club actually does try to smack you over the head with its twist, this trailer is like, there is no twist. Like, you're just playing a horror game, and you're just playing a cute anime girl that's in a horror game. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know if I was particularly enthralled with that, so I wouldn't even say I particularly think Silent Hill is what I would go for. I'd say almost like it looked like Doki Doki Club meets like Harvest Moon, it's kind of a more similar vibe to what I would say. But, I do like when people try something different, and this does look different. I can't say it looks great, but I do appreciate the idea and the creativity behind it. Next up, Seven Deadly Sins Origins. This is a prequel game, an open world prequel game for the anime. I watched the first season of Seven Deadly Sins. I thought it was a fine, okay shonen. Apparently the show gets really bad is what I hear, but people continue to like it and watch it. Anyways, this is an anime tie-in game with that. Honestly, looks pretty solid from what the trailer showed for an anime game. Guaranteed it won't be very good. This is a game for if you like Seven Deadly Sins, you should play it. There you go. Welcome to every anime game. I didn't realize that Seven Deadly Sins was popular enough to warrant its own game that looked this big. Like a gacha game, a mobile game, sure. Give Seven Deadly Sins a freaking trading card mobile game or some bullcrap. Like every anime under the sun has that. They're easy to produce and they make a lot of money. So just freaking, yeah, sure, make it for them. I would understand that. But this is like a pretty big in-depth development of an open world game. I don't know. That just sounds like you probably are expecting a pretty big return on that because there's probably a lot of development that went into that. I just don't know if Seven Deadly Sins is a strong enough IP to do that, but clearly somebody did. Maybe Netflix. I don't know. But anyways, I'm not going to play this game unless it's like freaking free or something. I didn't think Seven Deadly Sins was that good. I've only heard bad things about later seasons, and this is only for the hardcores. As every anime game typically is. Next up was Jurassic World Evolution 3. They've made 2 other ones. It's like a, roller coaster tycoon, but with dinosaurs. And I can't say I give a frick. Moving on. Mina the Hollower. Mina the Hollower obviously was expected last year, got pushed back into kind of limbo, and was given a release date of October 31st. And a demo out the same day as the announcement, which I definitely intend to try because this is from the same people who made Shovel Knight. It is a kind of an indie studio that a lot of people have a lot of eyes on. They've been making Shovel Knight for like the past literal decade at this point. Shovel Knight is an old school throwback game, side-scrolling 2D platformer action game. It's a solid game. It is very nostalgia heavy. Very, 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 very much plucking on nostalgic heartstrings. And I think a large part of why that game is so successful. I think Shovel Knight is a very good game. I am nowhere near as attached to Shovel Knight as the vast majority of people you will probably hear talk about it, because it is not made for me. I was too young when those games that it is based on were coming out. Mina the Hollower, however, is much more of like a GBA, Game Boy Advance kind of era nostalgic throwback, and that is more of my era. Like, that's kind of where I start to come in, and I'm way more like interested in Mina the Hollower than I was in Shovel Knight. And I think that, if anything looks the way this footage does and everything I've seen of the game so far, this game is going to be a big deal. Just wait until this comes out. It's going to be a hit, no doubt. Next up, Deadpool VR, starring Neil Patrick Harris as Deadpool, exclusive to Meta VR. I have not mentioned this, but I do have a Quest 3S, I believe, the cheaper version of the 3. And I played the Batman game, waiting to kind of talk about that on the podcast at the right time. But like I said, I'm in the PlayStation Showcase. I'm a big VR supporter. It's great to see that there is actually like a big budget VR game coming out on a big console. Seems to be they're really putting out like 1, maybe 2 of these big VR games a year for the Quest. Hey, better than frickin' Sony is. So, and I like Deadpool. So, and I liked the Batman game. So I intend on playing this game to give me a good reason to put on the headset again and experience life as Deadpool. The previous Deadpool game that came out on PlayStation 3 was a game that I played and I enjoyed just because I enjoyed Deadpool as a character. So I intend to probably just get my money's worth out of the humor that this game has. Neil Patrick Harris is a big deal. Picking up him as the main lead here, really couldn't tell that it was him. But, Norman North probably crying a little bit, losing a little bit of his paycheck. But anyway, next up, Dying Light, The Beast. It's another Dying Light game. This is using the original protagonist of Dying Light 1. If you didn't know, Dying Light 2 is a different protagonist. This is going back to the Dying Light 1 guy's story, which I actually played Dying Light 1, haven't played Dying Light 2, beat Dying Light 1. I don't even remember who this guy is. People were acting like this is a big deal. He's coming back. Oh, the protagonist from the first game. Like, that game had a story. Like, I don't even remember. But it looks like more Dying Light is really kind of the end of that discussion. It looks like more Dying Light. Honestly, I thought that this game had come out. I thought this was a expansion, a standalone expansion that had come out a long time ago. I guess I'm misremembering that. But The Beast is like not a numbered game. I don't expect it to be blowing anybody away. Dying Light 2 didn't really do that, and I don't expect this one to either. Moving on. At this point in the showcase, I was kind of getting underwhelmed personally. I was waiting for some big hit in the middle of the showcase, and I was like, I really have gone the entire, over half the showcase at this point and seen nothing I care about. I was like, I really don't care about anything. I think Deadpool VR was at that point the most interesting thing I had seen. And I was like, we're an hour plus into this. What the frick is going on? Why are we wasting my time with all this bull crap? We have to have better games than this. Also, there were a bunch of ads for freaking anime games coming up in between these games to a point where I almost skipped this particular game. Toa and the Guardians of the Sacred Tree. It's a Hades-like anime game that I genuinely thought was another ad for another freaking anime gotcha game that the Game Awards was pushing on me. And it just looks like an anime Hades game. If you're looking for a game to kind of fill the void while you're waiting for Hades 2 to come out, I guess you can try this one. I don't know. It looked okay. Next up was Acts of Blood. It's a Sifu clone. It basically just looked like a bigger budget, maybe, kinda, depending on what you can do, version of Sifu. You are doing kung fu, fighting people in back alleys, and beating them up with your fists and pipes and stuff like that. It really gave me some real serious Sifu vibes, and I thought Sifu was fine. I put that game on the easiest difficulty and kind of blazed through it because I, again, don't want to play very hard games. So, I'm not particularly interested in Acts of Blood either because Sifu really didn't make me freak out that much. Next up was actually one of my favorite games of the show. Scott Pilgrim EX was revealed by Tribute Games, who is also working on Marvel Invasion and I think another like side-scrolling beat-em-up game right now. They're actually doing a lot, but this is, some of the original team that made the original Scott Pilgrim game. So if you didn't know, Scott Pilgrim had a side-scrolling beat-em-up a long time ago, published by Ubisoft, and it went through a lot of problems. At one point, it was completely taken off of store shelves because of course, copyright issues, whatever the frick, however long that they had paid for the rights to the Scott Pilgrim license, it lapsed. I'm assuming it was, whoever was in charge, whoever owned it at that point. It was not the original creator, Brian Lee O'Malley, of Scott Pilgrim, but it was somebody else. Basically was like, yeah, you can't continue to sell this game anymore for whatever reason. It was a great game. One of my, if not my favorite, like side-scrolling beat-em-up games ever, and like a ton of fun. And I really like the Scott Pilgrim IP in general as well. And very disappointing. Kind of was a huge poster child for like game preservation for a really long time, because it was like, this is a great game and nobody can play it anymore. And then eventually Ubisoft re-released it. You can buy it again on stores, and that was a big deal. Everybody's like, oh, yay, it's back. Now we have a sequel. Hooray! I will definitely be picking this up. It has a story written by Brian Lee O'Malley, the original creator of Scott Pilgrim himself. And, like I said, the original developers are a lot of the same team. And, I mean, they've been making... These are the guys who made TMNT Shredder's Revenge, which was a great side-scrolling beat-em-up game, and I think are clearly on pace to just continue making great side-scrolling beat-em-up games, making another great side-scrolling beat-em-up game. So, like, I am genuinely excited for this game, and highly looking forward to it. Next up, we got a Mind's Eye launch trailer with Agent 47 cameoing. Really, we had a couple of IO Interactive bits here. They kind of had a little segment to themselves. Mind's Eye is being published by IO Interactive, which are the same people who obviously make and publish Hitman. And are going to be making the new James Bond 007 game. So it's pretty cool, right? Like Mind's Eye is gonna have a tie-in with that, and everything I hear about this game is it's a complete and utter dumpster fire. It is from the producer of Grand Theft Auto, or several Grand Theft Auto games. He left and went to Rockstar. They're trying to do a lot of ambitious stuff with that studio, trying to make like Everywhere as like a platform for games. This is kind of their first big push for that. Everything else about this game is apparently like it's just a total dumpster fire. Executives are leaving, previews are being sent out, and everybody who's getting a preview is saying this game is completely buggy and a total mess and a disaster. It's not looking good. And I think the game comes out in like a couple days, actually. So like it's we'll see. But people are really expecting low scores for that one. And then they said, okay, They spent way too long on this, by the way. Hitman 3, or World of Assassination, is getting another elusive target, which is Le Chauffeur. I think is how you pronounce it. I'm not French. But he's the bad guy from Casino Royale. They got the actor to come back, reprise his role, and he basically came out and talked about how he's like, oh, it's really great to be returning as a James Bond villain again. I really like doing that, and it's a really big role because I was in a James Bond movie. And it's like, okay, yeah, cool, that's great. Like who cares? It doesn't matter that that we got the guy to come out and say he's just reprising his role, doing, saying basically just a bunch of press statements for it. It really underwhelmed me. What really is kind of crazy is like it's a limited time thing, and I'm like, I think it's only available for like a month or 3 months or something like that. I'm like, is Hitman still making that much money that they're able to just like put this big, and they've done this multiple times, get some big Hollywood celebrity in as an elusive target for like a month and then like freaking pull the mission so you can never play it again? What the frick? Is it making that much money that you can just continuously do that? I don't know what the revenue structure is for that game and how many people are playing it, but I can't imagine it's that lucrative. Really? I don't know. I'd have to go back and double check. I've played all of it, all the main story missions, but I never went back and checked what everything else was going on there. It was kind of a mess up until now, to be quite honest, in terms of its rollout. But anyway, if you want another elusive target, you can do that one. And it looked actually pretty cool. So there you go. Free content for you. Next up was Lego Party, which is a Mario Party clone with Legos. Who cares? Next up was Lego Voyagers. It's a cute-looking physics co-op game where you play as 2 Lego studs and you kind of build stuff to get across gaps and solve and traverse puzzles and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't care. And moving on, Wildgate. This was a little bit interesting because it's from previous Blizzard devs. Once I knew that, I was a lot more interested in it. It's a space shooter, and it's where you're essentially like invading other people's ships in outer space, and having ship combat and stealing stuff from each other's ships, and sabotaging them and stuff like that. And it kind of reminded me of like Star Wars Battlefront 2. There's like a mode where you can do that. Like the original Battlefront 2, by the way. Like way, way back in the day. There's like a mode where you can do space dogfights, and then like you can fly into an opponent's carrier and like sabotage and kill them from the inside. And I always thought that was so cool. And I always wanted that fantasy of doing that. I loved doing that as a kid. And it looks like that. Like it looks like that, but like Blizzard devs are working on it. And it's actually like a lot more fleshed out and a lot like that's like the central focus of the game. So very interested to see this game actually in the future. It'll be fully multiplayer, I'm sure, which is unfortunate because that kind of is a little bit of a turnoff for me, but it is what it is. Next up, Blighted, the newest game from Drinkbox Studios, which, if you didn't know, is the developers of Guacamelee and Nobody Saves the World. And as I also know them, Severed, which they didn't want to talk about because of course, that game flopped significantly. It was only on the Vita and I think eventually put on phones, which, yeah, nobody's going to play that. So it's an isometric dungeon crawling game. I wish there was more to say about it. I really don't have much else to say about it other than it is a Drinkbox game. Kind of looks a little bit like Hades. Again, don't really know much about it in terms of gameplay. All I know is Drinkbox Studios is an incredibly talented development studio that I really think every game they make is incredibly fun. The problem with that is nothing here really looked that impressive, so I really can't say I'm super excited about this. It didn't look very impressive or very original, which normally Drinkbox Studio games do. So, like, that's where I'm kind of like looking at this game and I'm like, this really seems like the least Dreambox Studios game they've ever made. And I'm really hoping that there's more to this game than initially shown. Next up was Ill, which is a super scary, realistic-looking horror FPS. Definitely caught my eye. Definitely looked really creepy. Enemy designs are definitely like skin-crawlingly spooky-looking. Dark, basements or something you're crawling around in. I mean, it's going to be cool for sure. The problem here is I have no idea what it is other than just looking cool. I don't know if the game itself is actually any good. So have to wait on that, but definitely caught my eye, which a lot of games in this showcase did not. So that's cool. Mecha Break. It's a mech fighting game. Moving on. Infinitesimals is a game that's definitely worth noting. It's an interesting looking game where you play as little aliens that are the size of little ants on Earth with jetpacks and guns, and you're flying around and shooting things, and it looks neat. I like the idea of that, of kind of being a little man in a big world, and I like the idea of jetpacks and guns. I mean, always. The game's aliens look like kind of lame, to be quite frank, and like the gameplay looks like it could definitely use some tweaking and polish. But again, the idea looks fun just in general to interact with. So I'm interested to see where this game goes in the future. Don't have high hopes, but I hope that it does go high. That's Infinitesimals. Next up, Street Fighter 6, Year 3 character reveals. That's Alex, Sagat, Sea Viper, and Ingrid. I don't know frickin' anything about Street Fighter. I don't play fighting games. I know Alex, and that's like it. I know of Sagat and Sea Viper. That's like, I don't know. I don't know anything about Street Fighter. Moving on. I hope you're happy if you like Street Fighter. You got freaking 4 more characters. Next up is Last Flag. Last Flag. Oh, man. This game has major Concord energy. It is a hero shooter capture the flag game with a 70s vibe, so very groovy. Yeah, I fear that this game is not long for this world. This game looks like it will come out and nobody will care, and it will die. Again, I see hero shooter. I see main mode is capture the flag is its main differentiator, and a 70s architecture and vibe, design, and yeah, I can't. You gotta do more. And while I see a lot here that's like, I can see somebody in a boardroom being like, oh, well, it's kind of like cartoony, and everybody likes hero shooters, and capture the flag's my favorite mode in every multiplayer game. Nobody does that one anymore. And like, oh, the 70s isn't that, it makes it individual. It's like, bro, that makes you sound a lot like Concord is what it frickin' does. Like a lot of that kind of same stuff is in Concord, like a lot of it. And I feel like a lot of what this game is showing off is a very quick death. So be on the lookout for Last Flag. We'll see about that one. Next up is Wu-Tang, Rise of the Deceiver. This was obviously definitely an eyebrow raiser for me. Join Ghostface Killah as he tries to save the world and the rest of the Wu-Tang Clan in this action RPG. What the frick? Okay, Wu-Tang Clan getting their own game. Very interesting for sure. And yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll be a great game, but like, hey, just the idea of it in general is really cool, and it'll probably be fine. It looked fine. It just won't be great. You're definitely picking up this game because it is a Wu-Tang Clan game. Like, you're not picking it up because you really just want to crawl through some dungeons and beat up, things in an anime, or not an anime, but an action RPG game. Definitely not. Next up, Into the Unwell. Definitely caught my eye here. Even though it is basically Cuphead, it is a Cuphead art style 3D action platformer that I'm likely to try just because of that. It looks like, a 50s style cartoon, but it has very dark themes. So, like, you're a drunken addict who vomits and kills things violently. It very Cuphead vibes. That's very Cuphead reminiscent. And you're going through. It's a 4-player co-op. It's action platforming, which I love. Action platformers. It's one of my favorite genres. I'm the platforming king. So like, as I've mentioned a few times on this show. So I'm looking forward to it. I can't imagine this game is going to be out of the low 80s. Like, there's no way this is a game that's above an 82. It will likely be like mid to high 70s if I had to guess. But I will probably try it at some point. It looks cool, at least in terms of its art style. Next up is Stranger Than Heaven, the new Ryuga Gotoku Studios game, which you will obviously recognize as the Yakuza, Like a Dragon, and Judgment developers. Their new IP, they finally named it, gave it a little bit more detail and clarity, which was Project Century previously. Now, of course, named Stranger Than Heaven. This is basically another Yakuza or Judgment clone, which I don't want. I would just play the other Judgment or Yakuza games I haven't played yet because they keep making those every year. I continue to struggle with why people think this studio is like so amazing, because they really are just making the same game like every year. Like, apparently the same game like 3 times every year. I tried Judgment thinking that it was going to be the big breakaway from Yakuza formula, and that it was going to try a lot of really cool different stuff, and it was going to be in a new engine. And guess what I got? Another Yakuza game with a different coat of paint. It's the exact same thing. It was so similar. It was almost insulting to me. And it made me essentially go like, okay, I have no need to touch another Ryuga Gotoku game, because they're the freaking same games. Like, I am satisfied with what I have gotten from them. And don't get me wrong, the first Ryuga Gotoku game that you play is going to be really good. And then every single one of them is going to be exactly like that. And it's like, if that's what you want, fine. But, like, I need more variety there. I still need to try out Yakuza 7 or Like a Dragon 1. But, like, again, I am so burnt out on that studio that I just cannot get around to it. But Stranger Than Heaven is another one that people are finally coming around on Yakuza. I got in on Yakuza a lot earlier than a lot of people, so I've been burnt out for a long time. People are just now kind of finding this series, so they're just starting to kind of get burnt out, I would think, fairly soon. But we'll see. Maybe not. Maybe they're not my kind of games. I don't know. But, it is what it is. Next up, and our final big mic drop moment, which was kind of intended to be like a bait and switch. Halfway through the showcase, or a little bit more like 2/3 of the way through the showcase, they brought out Resident Evil, and they basically said, oh yeah, we were going to, announce Resident Evil 9, but we actually don't. It's not ready. Like, we need more time. And I was like, okay, well, that's a total bait. Totally baited, because, bro, of course you're not going to literally make an announcement to say you're not going to announce anything. I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if their mic drop moment at the end is Resident Evil 9. Guess what the mic drop moment was? It was Resident Evil 9. Resident Evil Requiem is actually the title for the next Resident Evil game. Teased at the show and actually revealed at the very end. Coming out February 2026. Very little information here. We didn't really get a lot of information on what the story is. We didn't get a lot of information on what the gameplay is. It was more so a teaser trailer than anything else. And, yeah. I need way more info here. Obviously, it's going to be really good because it's a Resident Evil game. I've been really enjoying 7 and 8, and this is obviously now 9. So, we shall see. There's already a lot of leaks and rumors kind of around this game. Not going to go into them here, but, I'm interested. I'm always interested in Resident Evil. It's a solid series that I really admire and I really enjoy. So, that was their big mic drop moment. That was the showcase for Summer Games Fest, and what that essentially made me think is, holy frick, Microsoft must have every single big reveal on lock, because this is... There's nothing here. Like, where are all the reveals? There's nothing. You know, like, it's Resident Evil, and then a bunch of small games nobody really cares about, and then like some updates on some old games that that maybe would have been a big deal if they were like Stranger Than Heaven would have been an okay reveal, but it was already revealed at not Tokyo Game Show, at the Game Awards. And it's like, what the frick was this? It's a wet fart of a show. Wet fart of a show, to say the very least. Very disappointing. I would say this is like a D+. This is like a D+ of a show. I can't say that like I'm like angry with it, but I do say like this was not exciting at all. If we had to do like a stud and a dud, obviously the stud is going to be Resident Evil 9, but that's because it blows everything out of the water here. If I had to be nice and be like, okay, yeah, there's probably another one, Scott Pilgrim EX for me would be the other stud. The actual thing that I'm interested in. Beyond that, duds, holy frick. Like, what, you know, like there's so many things here I don't care about at all. Let me actually run through here. What looks the worst? There's so many things that were just like, I don't even care. Like, it's like the Chronicles Medieval. It's like, what even is that? I don't know. Should I be excited for it? Should I not be? I don't know. You know, like, is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? I don't know, dude. Like, there's no way for me to know. Toa and the Guardians of the Sacred Tree, like, okay, I guess that's cool. You know, like, I don't know much about it. You know, like, you really haven't told me very much. I guess if I had to really put like I don't want to play that at all. Probably like Lego Party, I guess. No, we're going to go with Last Flag. I think that game's going to end up being the game that gets burnt the hardest out of everything in this showcase. Nothing here is like egregious, but nothing here is very interesting either. So it's like, that's why I'm going with D+. It's like it's almost a waste of my time, you know? It just felt like a little too much, right? A little too much, too little. Admittedly though, I was never bored. Sometimes at like Games Fest or something, or, you know, like Game Awards, it's like a 3-hour show, and I'm like, bro, I'm about to fall asleep, and like I'm the target audience. Like, that's a problem. And this one never did that. It was paced well, and I was often like, okay, like this is something, you know, to actually tide me over. Ads weren't like egregious, even though there were a lot of anime ads, anime game, gacha game ads. Like, they weren't egregious. There'll be like sometimes like 5 minutes of ads in like the Game Awards or something. But anyway, that was not as bad. So maybe I'll say C-. I'll change it. I'll reassess and I'll say C-. Still got Resident Evil 9 out of it. And like nothing there looked like the worst game of all time. So it was just kind of, you know, disappointing for sure. So yeah. So I was like, okay, Microsoft has everything. Clearly, we've got Microsoft. They've got this on lock. Holy frick. These guys are going to blow this conference out of the water. They are going to win E3 by a long shot. Sony's conference was good, but like they didn't have any big mic drop moments. Like their big mic drop moment was a freaking Marvel Fighter. Like, it's like, that's not for everybody. You know, like that's not going to be this huge wide-selling game. It's going to be for fighting game fans, which is fine. So I'm like, okay, clearly all the big announcements here that we're looking for, those are coming out in Microsoft. Microsoft is going to drop a massive bombs across the board. Well, let's get into that, shall we? Shall we discuss the big bombs that were dropped at Microsoft? Because let's be real, there weren't that many. First up was the big opener, Outer Worlds 2. This is one that Microsoft is putting a lot on. They put, this is clearly like the release they think is going to be their big 2025 release at this point. It's really hard to kind of say that is the case, because Avowed just came out, made by the same studio, admittedly the B studio, and it didn't really light the world on fire. And Outer Worlds 1, I think people reviewed very well at the time because it was like a middle finger to Bethesda, who was like kind of going off the rails at the time. But like now I think a lot of people look back on that game and are like, this game is really kind of mid. And so now you have Outer Worlds 2, and it's like, okay, now you have a Microsoft budget from the ground up. You know, like you have the ability to do what you want. What can you do with this? And like for what I saw, and they also had like a direct specifically for this game after the showcase where they do a deep dive into it. And I mean, it looks like more Outer Worlds freaking, you know, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I hope it's better than Outer Worlds 1, but like I genuinely was kind of bored during my playthrough of Outer Worlds 1. I probably honestly would have dropped it if I hadn't put money down on it. Because at the time I didn't have Game Pass, so I actually freaking bought the game. So like, you know, like it was like, I was pretty disappointed with it, to say the least. I didn't think it was a bad game, but I didn't think it was good either. So like, I'm really hoping for good things from Outer Worlds 2, but like that is their big opener. Again, it is a big studio. You know, the developers of Fallout New Vegas, which I think is vastly overrated, but, you know, it is what it is. Obsidian has definitely made some good games before, so we're hoping Outer Worlds 2 is going to be a good one, too. Next up is High on Life 2, coming out winter 2025. I should say Outer Worlds 2 is launching October 29th, because we got a lot of games coming out late October, just FYI. High on Life 2, coming out winter 2025, from Squanch Games. Here's the thing about that. I like, actually, High on Life. I like it for a specific reason, though, and that's its sense of humor. I think everybody would kind of agree with that the big draw to High on Life was the fact that it was written and voiced, a lot of at least was written and voiced, by Justin Roiland, who is the co-creator of Rick and Morty and the previous voices of both characters as well. He's no longer with the studio. So he actually founded the studio and then left it shortly after this game released. Reason being was because he was accused of soliciting minors sexually and like sexually assaulting people. So, yeah, those are the accusations. Obviously, he's come out and his lawyer has said these are horrible defamation. You know, we do not think that any of these are true. Of course, as you will. But, like, that's the reason he was removed as the voice from Rick and Morty, and that is the reason he left his studio. And admittedly, he left on his own accord there. But, like, he was the secret sauce that made these games good. Or this game, I should say. Squanch Games made a couple of games. But it was very clear that the creative vision, what made these games good at all, was Justin Roiland. Like, it was his sense of humor, it was his voice acting, it was his concepts that kind of made these games, and without him, I can't imagine High on Life 2 will be very good. Like, High on Life is a fine first-person shooter, but it's not, like, the best. Like, what makes that game anywhere near worth it is the sense of humor and the acting in the game. And a lot of that is going to be removed. You can't replace a guy like Justin Roiland unless you bring in a very big comedic voice, and I just can't imagine that they're going to do that. So we'll see. It's very telling that this game's announcement trailer, has no voice acting, no humor at all. It is just a cinematic trailer showcasing gameplay, which is, again, like I said, not bad from High on Life, but not the star of the show. So, like, that is a game I would definitely hold my breath on and definitely wait to see how that turns out. Next up is Residence: A Plague Tale Legacy. This is a new game in the Plague's Tale universe. Seems to be set around like the Minotaur, like the Labyrinth, which is interesting. It's just a teaser trailer here, but it is worth noting, like, this is a Plague Tale game. They're trying to expand the universe, similar to Atomic Heart, which is also interesting. Clearly, those games were successful, got a lot of attention and a lot of praise, enough so that the studio seems to be tripling down on it and making spin-offs. So very interesting to see. I'm interested to see where that goes. Those games have always been like very good B-tier games, AA games, as other people would say. Next, I think, is one of the biggest announcements of the conference, or the showcase in general, which is the long-rumored and heavily awaited Xbox Asus ROG Ally. It is the handheld Xbox. So very interesting here. Was not told any specs, was not told any price, which are going to be very big factors in the success for this device. But it is a handheld Xbox, and it is running on Windows, so you can put Steam on it, you can put Epic Games on it, and it'll run all your stuff. You can also download all of your Game Pass games locally to it, instead of having to only stream. So like currently, I have a Steam Deck, and in order to play any games on Game Pass, I have to stream them. So that was a very big game-changing like bullet point for me, was like, oh, I can download these games natively? That's pretty cool. This was also used to double down on Silksong coming out in 2025. Very surprised they didn't have a trailer to show for this game or a release date. Which the Silksong developers later came out on their Discord and said, we will be releasing before Christmas 2025, which is crazy. They still don't have a release date locked for that game yet. Absolutely insane. But either way, having a portable Xbox is a big deal. It seems to be they're really just making it a Game Pass machine, / a Steam Deck replacement, to be quite honest. And I'm down for that. I love my Steam Deck, but if there's a better device that does all the same things, I have no issue jumping ship. If it is a very reasonably priced device, I may pick that up. You know, like, it will probably be freaking $600 or some bullcrap. I'm not going to pay $600. I have a Steam Deck that was already pricey enough. I have no need on dropping that kind of coin. But if it's $300, bro, I may actually heavily consider getting one. Like, that would be I think that would be significant. Like, it's really fully depends on the price and the specs and what it can do. And right now I'm seeing it can do everything I want it to do. It's a matter of, you know, what the price is. So very interesting there. They followed that up with The Blood of John Walker, which is coming out in 2025. This was something I did not care about until I did more research on. From Rebel Wolves. It's a dark fantasy RPG. And I was like, I don't care about this. This doesn't look that interesting. And then all of a sudden they were like, well, it's from the developers. It's from CD Projekt Red developers. I'm like, oh. Oh, okay, I see. It's another Witcher. Okay. Okay, you have me interested. So I'm willing to see where we go from here. But again, not much to see here other than this game's coming this year, which is honestly pretty surprising, to be quite frank. Next up, Super Meat Boy 3D coming in 2026, which it looked like 3D Super Meat Boy, which I'm all about. I would honestly prefer a 3D Super Meat Boy. I'm a much big 3D platformer fan than I am a 2D platformer fan. Problem with Super Meat Boy is it is insanely difficult, and it looks like this is definitely trying to capture that energy. Shows off a lot of deaths in the trailer, and I don't know. The thing about Super Meat Boy, I did beat Super Meat Boy, but there's optional levels that I played in the like updated version of the game that are next to impossible. I just freaking dropped. I was like, I can't do this. But I did beat the game. The base game is honestly a fine level of difficulty. It's a challenging platformer that doesn't make you beat you over the head with the difficulty, but like the optional levels definitely freaking did. Next up, Ninja Gaiden 4 gets a release date October 21st. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've talked about Ninja Gaiden 4 before. It was revealed at Xbox's event earlier this year. It looks good. Platinum Games developed. So hopefully that'll be a good one. Next up, Indy, The Order of the Giants. It is a DLC for Indiana Jones, the Indiana Jones games, which I gave my number 5 spot of my Game of the Year list, which I'd take that back now because I played shortly after. Unfortunately, that's how that works. I played 1,000 times Resist, and I liked that game way more, so it knocked it off the top 5. But that game's really solid, and I'm definitely in on it. I'm assuming it's a free update for Game Pass members out October 21st, which I will definitely be checking. Or excuse me, September 4th. I was reading the Ninja Gaiden 4 release date again. September 4th of this year, which I will definitely be checking out if it is a free update for Game Pass owners. Next up is Beast of Reincarnation. 2026 release date for this guy. And I didn't give a frick about this except for one thing, and I think it's really the only thing people care about, is this looks like another Japanese action game, okay? I was not particularly impressed by this showing. It did not show me anything crazy. The only thing that mattered here, the developer is Game Freak. So if you didn't know, Game Freak is the longtime developer of Pokemon. They are the original and continuous developers of the Pokemon game franchise, the turn-based battle games that Nintendo publishes. So that's a big deal. They don't normally, or they really have never strayed very far from doing Pokemon. So this is obviously a massive pivot for them as a studio. The thing is other than the fact that this game's, like, this name is on it, I don't really see anything here that was particularly wowing. Like, I need to see a lot more from this game than, the fact that these guys made just a turn-based game that was also very popular because of the IP it was associated with. To say that Game Freak made, like, one of the best JRPGs of all time is, like, kind of silly. It obviously didn't. It just did something with the IP that was very successful, right? So, we'll see. We'll see. I don't have particularly high hopes, as many people do, just because Game Freak is on the label. Next up was Clockwork Revolution, coming in due time. Tee-hee-hee, because this game is a game about time travel, baby. It looks like kind of like a Bioshock / Singularity, like kind of first-person shooter game with like a big sense of humor. It looks fun. Like, I'll probably play it, especially if it's like a Game Pass game. Like, I'll give it a shot for sure. I need to see more about it. It's about time travel. It's kind of a steampunk. It's a steampunk aesthetic kind of game. And it looks, I mean, if you've seen Bioshock or Singularity, it kind of looks like that. Singularity is kind of a Bioshock clone in of itself, but the reason I bring up Singularity is because it has kind of time travel elements in it that are used very regularly as mechanics, which is what this trailer kind of shows off. It looks fun. It looks interesting. Doesn't look revolutionary for a game called Clockwork Revolution, but it does look good enough to give a little bit of my time. Just keep an eye on. Just keep an eye on it. Next up was Grounded 2. Game preview launching July 29th. If you liked Grounded, you're going to get more, baby. And that's all I have to say about that. I never played much of Grounded. I played a little bit on Game Pass, but only 15 minutes. It's just, I'm not a big survival crafting guy. It's just not my genre. Next up, Chronos, The New Dawn was shown off again. It's Bloober Team's next big game after Silent Hill 2. It's their own original IP. It is the test to see if Bloober Team can do something without people telling them how to do it. I have been very vocal of being like, Bloober Team is a very mid developer. Everything I've ever played from them is very mid. I will admit that Silent Hill 2 Remake is a good game, but would it have been good if Bloober Team didn't have a blueprint of one of the greatest games of all time to copy verbatim? That, I think, would be a more difficult proof that they are a decent developer. I think people are now like kind of looking at this game with like, ooh, maybe it'll be good because they made Silent Hill 2 Remake and it was good. But like, again, every other game I've ever played from Bloober Team is like meh. It's like one of the most mediocre games I've ever played, kind of level of development. So we'll see here. It's really their proving moment, I think, to show they can do something on their own. Next up, Aphelion. This is Don't Nod's next big game. If you don't know, Don't Nod is the Life is Strange developers. They also have made a handful of other games that nobody cares about, and I've played, and I didn't enjoy. Life is Strange I love. It's a great game, and I would honestly highly recommend it. I would not bet anything that this game is going to be good. I think it's going to be probably mid as frick, because it's a Don't Nod game. Don't Nod is mid, bro. Like they got, I feel like they got lucky with Life is Strange, and everything else they've ever made has been super mid. And it's really unfortunate because I really love narrative choice-based adventure games. This is another one. It is basically just a Don't Nod game, but in space. In collaboration with some real astronauts, too. So it's representing the astronaut community well. And that's like kind of all I have to say about that one is like, it's another Don't Nod game, and I have no faith in Don't Nod to make anything other than just mediocre games that are a waste of your time. So I would not bet highly on Don't Nod currently. Next up is one of my highlights of the show, actually. There Are No Ghosts at the Grand, coming in 2026. This game looks kind of cool. Looks like a very creative and interesting game about like building and managing a hotel / like little town. But like it looked all over the place. It was like had stealth elements and like musical numbers and like wacky supernatural happenings, and like it was just so all over the place that it definitely grabbed my attention. But I can't see all of these elements coming together being fun. like you really have to hope that it actually turns out to be a good game is the problem, right? So like it's one of those games that I really want to be good, but I'm really skeptical actually will be. It's one of those games that like the concepts looks really good, but the gameplay, have no idea. I'm also not a big like management guy, like sim kind of building guy. So like that seemed to be a big part of the game, and I don't know. It really depends how it handles it, and what else is going on in the game. But we'll see. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on There Are No Ghosts at the Grand. Next is Age of Mythology Retold. This is our Heavenly Spear, I should say. It's an expansion for Age of Mythology Retold. And moving on, Mudang, Two Hearts. It's an action horror stealth game. Couldn't really gather too much about it from its cinematic trailer. And moving on, Planet of Luna 2, Children of the Leaf. This is a sequel to Planet of Luna, which I don't know anything about. Like, it's honestly kind of surprising I'm seeing a sequel to this shown off at Microsoft at all, when I don't think I know anything about this particular game. Like, I don't know how I passed this one by, but it looks kind of like a limbo-y, kind of side-scrolling silent game, where you're just kind of puzzle platforming through areas, and it's kind of telling a mysterious story. It's kind of what I get from this. Definitely not playing it, though, because I never played the first one, and I don't particularly care about this kind of genre of games. Next up, Fallout 76 Gone Fission, which obviously is supposed to sound more like fission, but you get what you get what it's going for. It's basically another Fallout 76 expansion where you're able to fish. People in MMOs love that bullcrap, though, so like that's basically what Fallout 76 is now, and it's like, okay, give the people what they want, let them fish. So I hope people enjoy their fishing update in Fallout 76. Next up, we have our normal anime tie-in game, Solo Leveling: Arise Overdrive, coming in 2025. This is obviously based on the highly popular manhwa Solo Leveling, which recently had season 2, which was like a massive deal. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people watched it. It's a very good fantasy fulfillment, power fantasy anime, and it's getting a game. And guess what I think about that? If you like Solo Leveling, you should play it. If not, it's going to be mid as frick, because that's every freaking anime game. But it looked like almost like an action dungeon crawling RPG, which is exactly what it should be, because that's what the series is about. So it's like, okay, cool. Looks like you kind of get to build your own protagonist, and obviously not really build it that much, but like kind of build out the skills of your protagonist from the game or from the show. And, I'll keep an eye on it. There's no way this game is going to be great, but, again, if you just kind of want to experience the anime in the closest form that you possibly can, you're going to be able to do that. Next up is Anemo, which looks like a Korean game, if I had to guess, because I believe K-pop was playing during the trailer, but it is a cutesy little Pokemon game. Looked kind of like you're running around in an open world, kind of. I'm sure there's like some freaking crafting elements or some bull crap in there, because it is what it is. Yeah, I don't have much to say about this. Obviously, I'm not the target demo. It was pretty brief and pretty cinematic, so like there was not a lot to comment on here. Next up, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 out July 11th. Demo out same day. Really didn't show off anything, to be quite frank. Showed off nothing we hadn't seen before, so it's just basically an ad. All of these are obviously ads, but it was not a very good one. How about that? It was just, hey, we're still around. Okay, bye. And, buy it when it comes out. And that's pretty much it. Next, At Fate's End. This one was another one that stood out to me from the developers of Spiritfarer, which I played about a third of. That game's actually pretty long and pretty mellow. And I was like, I enjoy what this game is, but I'm too bored. I'm too bored. And guess what? This developer, they heard me. They heard my cries. And they said, actually, we're going to make an action narrative game that actually looks pretty freaking rad. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I'm down for it. And so that's what they're doing. They're making an action fast-paced looking game. Looks very similar in art style to Spiritfarer. And, I think these developers have the ability to tell a good story, and hopefully it's not super long and drawn out and boring, and it doesn't look to be based on the trailer. So actually kind of looking forward to that. Next up, a reminder that Gears of War Reloaded is around. Just spoiler alert. We didn't get to see E-Day, Gears of War E-Day at all here. Very surprising to me. Clearly they are saving that for next year. At this point, that is the 25th anniversary of the brand, which they kind of noted later in the showing, kind of surprising we didn't get anything, considering they've already revealed it. Like you might as well. Next is obviously my favorite game of the showing, but revealed in like the most anticlimactic way. They drop the Persona 4 Revival show announcement, which is, of course, we all knew it was happening because of Persona 3 Reloaded, the remake of Persona 4, which is my favorite JRPG ever. I love Persona 4. I cannot wait. I will definitely be playing this game, but this trailer is quite possibly like the most like undercooked, like lackadaisical, just like, yeah, just announce it already. You know, like we just, no fanfare. Just like it basically was just like, here's the protagonist running down an alley and like here's a little bit of music from the game. And yeah, it was like maybe like a 20-second teaser, 30-second teaser. Didn't really show anything particularly interesting. Didn't really try to get any hype going for it. It's just like, yeah, it exists and it's going to be a minute. So just hang on, you know, it's not really at a place where we really want to show it off. And I was like, well, then why the frick are we showing it off? Like, just don't sit, wait. We don't need to reveal this game in like a really, like, honestly lame way. Like, it just felt like they did not care. And they were just like, yeah, we all know that you know we're developing it. So just like, we're just going to push it out there. Microsoft paid us a lot of money to show it here, so we just freaking did. And it's just like, okay, frick. If that's how you look at it, gosh darn. Okay. So that was easily the biggest game that I'm most interested in at this conference, but the trailer for it was so underwhelming. So underwhelming. Next up, I thought that was going to be their big mic drop moment, but they kept going. Sea of Thieves, Smuggler's Tide update. It's another season 17 of Sea of Thieves. Holy frick, I didn't know they had that many seasons. Obviously, the big success story for Microsoft over there, who had a game that came out and nobody really cared about that much, and they kept updating it to a point where people really like it. So, you know, if you like Sea of Thieves, you got more content. More. Next up, Invincible Versus. If you've heard of the Invincible series from Amazon, based on a comic graphic novel of the same name, it's a fighting game. It is a fighting game. I have never seen the show. I've always wanted to. It's on the list. Don't crucify me. But it is a fighting game made by Skybound, a Skybound sub-team, so you may know them as the Mortal Kombat guys. It is their B team, and it looks like it. It is honestly kind of sad after seeing the Marvel fighting game trailer from Sony, seeing this, and be like, oh yeah, this game doesn't look anywhere near as good. I'm already not a fighting game guy. I already have no connection to the Invincible franchise. I've never seen the show. So it's like, okay, I really don't have much interest here at all. And then also the game doesn't look that good comparative to other fighting games. Literally when I just saw a couple days ago. So it's like, yeah, I don't need this at all. I'm not about it. Next up was Final Fantasy VII Remake and 16 coming to Xbox. Obviously, we've talked about, I always say that. We've talked about that Square Enix has very publicly been like, we are not going to do this whole exclusive thing anymore. We make way more money when we put it on other consoles too. So we're just going to start putting everything on everything. And this is them doing that. The most interesting part of that announcement was 16 is out on the same day it was announced for the Xbox, which is pretty cool. Would have been even cooler if it was like a Game Pass game, but it is what it is. 16 is kind of okay. 16 is an okay game. I would say like 15's mid as frick, but I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is actually frickin' great. So like, it's one of my favorite games ever. So like, really super stoked that Xbox players, the 5 of you that refuse to go to any other console to play games, will finally be able to experience it. Next up is Keeper from Double Fine Productions, out October 17th this year. It is a kind of not whimsical, but like it's almost trippy looking. But it's a game about a lighthouse, and you are a lighthouse with legs, and you're like traversing a kind of weird and whimsical world as a lighthouse. It seems to be kind of a platformer. I mean, I love Double Fine, but Psychonauts is one of my favorite games of all time. Psychonauts 2 is one of my favorite games of all time as well. Love both of them to death. To say everything that Double Fine does is golden is obviously not true. Double Fine has always made games that are creatively very inspired, but not always crowd pleasers. Not always something everybody wants to play, and not always the most fun games to play. So this is definitely like a wait and see kind of thing. I'm really not sold on. I mean, is it a really interesting concept? Sure. Is it really like that interesting of a concept to me? No. Like, I'm not chomping at the bit to see the story and like the ethos of the lighthouse from Double Fine's Keeper. So for Double Fine, I was really hoping for a much splashier and a much bigger reveal. This seems like a much smaller game, and coming off of Psychonauts 2, like, that came out a good while ago at this point, and the fact that we're finally getting something from Double Fine again, and it's the first game from the ground up Double Fine's been able to produce with the full funding of Microsoft, and this is what we get, it really does underwhelm, I would say. I was hoping for a really big, awesome project, and it's not that, unfortunately. The final reveal for Microsoft was like, oh man, I was like, surely they have some big mic drop moment, right? Not really. Like, it was pretty obvious. I don't know anything about Call of Duty, specifically like the lore, but like the trailer they showed was a complete cinematic trailer, and it just focused on like the story of the next Call of Duty game, specifically Call of Duty Black Ops 7, out this year. But like, obviously, a Call of Duty comes out every freaking year. It's an annualized freaking series, and we haven't heard anything about the next one. So of course, the next Call of Duty is, guess what? Coming out this year, and they hadn't talked about it yet, so they were going to talk about it now, because it's probably the last time they're going to have a good time to reveal it and get a lot of eyes on it. That, like, Call of Duty really freaking needs that. But, you know, you get it. That was their big mic drop moment, and I didn't even know. I was like, this must be a new IP, because I don't know what the frick is going on. I don't know who these characters are. I don't know what they're talking about. Like, this is crazy. And then it dropped the mic of like, this is Black Ops 7, and I was just like, oh, well, that makes sense too, because I have no idea what's going on in Black Ops. Like, I don't know anything about the story there. So, yeah, I guess that makes sense too. And it's like, okay. So I was completely underwhelmed. What a obvious big, like, one more thing moment. Like, your one more thing at the end of a conference. Like, this should have been the opener. Like, to be quite frank. Like, this should have been the opener. Mic drop, I really don't know what the frick you would do, to be quite frank. What was the opener again? Outer Worlds 2? Nah, they probably did right. Outer Worlds 2 being the opener. But, like, you know, that just shows that, like, obviously Microsoft is holding for next year. Like, that's going to be their big year where they're going to have a lot of games that they think people are going to like. And that's kind of what they said. They were like, look, next year's our 25th anniversary. Or I think it's their 20th. I think it's their 20th anniversary. And they're like, we really kind of wanted to hold some big games for the 20th. So, like, chill out. You know, like, we're not going to show everything here. And it's like, okay, cool. So, overall, this was like, I don't know, C+, something like that in terms of rating. Really didn't blow me away. There were a couple of things here I was like, that looks cool. But, like, I'll go C+. Obviously, the thing that looked the best to me is Persona 4 Revival, but if I hadn't played Persona 3 Reload and Persona 4 already, bro, I wouldn't be freaking saying that. That trailer looked freaking mid. Like, it looked like they did not care about that game at all. So, you know, that would be my stud for this particular showcase. The dud, I don't know, what is it? Bear with me. Probably, what was it? I'm looking. There it is. Planet of Lana 2. Considering I didn't even know what the frick that game was, and they're like, they put time on it at a Microsoft conference. Yeah, probably that. Like, that's probably really harsh. Because, like, there's definitely games I care about less than that game. That I would probably play less than I would play that game, but like, I don't know. That just put me off. I was like, why haven't I heard of this game? Why haven't I heard of this game? And I even looked it up, and I was like, no, yeah, like, it wasn't that popular. Like, I don't know why we're putting that much time. But essentially, that's all of them. Dang, 2.5 hours. We still got to talk about the Switch 2. I told you at the beginning this was going to be rough on me. But like, dang. Really underwhelming overall. Sony ultimately had the best conference, like the best presentation by a long shot, I think. Summer Games Fest was like really underwhelming, really, really underwhelming. And it was very clear that like Xbox had some things, but they were trying to hold for next year. So like, I still think they had better announcements than freaking Summer Games Fest, which is why like you are going to see probably Summer Games Fest suffer a lot more in coming years, and like why probably the Game Awards are more so the one that's going to thrive, because Sony and Microsoft don't have a conference or a press conference or whatever the frick you want to call it around that time. But like overall, like I have to say I was expecting one or two big things. Like last year around this time, we had the Game of the Year announced. It was Astrobot. Astrobot was revealed at at Summer Games Fest. No, it wasn't. It was revealed at Sony's. It was revealed at Sony's State of Play for the summer. And it's like, I was expecting a big game that was trying to get out before GTA in 2025 to avoid that, bloodbath. And, like push a date and say, like, we're confirming we're coming out this year. And nothing happened, bro. It was really underwhelming. And, I'm used to a lot more from these showings, but like, it is what it is. We can't dwell on it for too much. I've already gone over 2.5 hours, and we haven't even gotten to one of the big things to talk about, which of course is the Switch 2. So Nintendo, as some of you may know, dropped their newest next-gen hardware to the public just a few days ago. I was fortunate enough to get my hands on a device on launch day. I went to GameStop and I lined up at 11 o'clock, a little bit before then, to get in at 11 and pick up my device, day one. And probably the last midnight launch I will ever experience in my life. I would assume GameStop will likely be dead by the time we have another hardware that would be coming out, or possibly, there won't be a new hardware that would come out that anybody would do a midnight release for, which is, a sad shame. But I had never been a part of a midnight release before because I had never had money before any of the consoles had come out. So and then of course the PlayStation 5 came out, and that was the pandemic. So, weren't many lines you were allowed to be in at the time. So, this was really the first one that I could even be a part of a midnight launch, and it was fine. Eventually got a couple of units. I have a couple of extra units from Walmart for friends, just in case they can't get a hold of one. It's seeming, and they came with potato chips and a Coke, which is a fun little marketing thing for Walmart to give everybody who ordered from them. But it's seeming that the stock for this is actually holding out pretty well. I was expecting this to be like clawing at people trying to get one of these things. It would be very difficult, and was really expecting like another PS5 situation where people were reselling this thing for double or more its market value, and people were desperately trying to get at it. And it really doesn't seem to be the case right now. I'm seeing it on eBay at like $600, and that's when you get the game. It's like $550 with tax. So like that means it's difficult to get, and you have to try to get one, but it's not that hard. People are not finding it that difficult, or the demand is not super that high that it's becoming a problem. So I'm happy to see that, and also not so happy because I bought extra units thinking that it would be hard for people, and now they may not need them. So I'm going to have to figure out what to do with those. Obviously, I can just return them, so it's no harm, no foul. But it's something I got to deal with though. Anyway, when I got the console, I opened it up, and I was shocked. I was overwhelmed, per se, by the fact that this is really a Switch 1 again. Like, this is, like, you go from GameCube to Wii to Wii U to Switch, and you're seeing a definitive change in hardware and what's going on, and I think you can kind of make the same thing for PS3 to PS4 to PS5, or even PS1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Like, there is definitive, like, okay, well, the UI is different, the settings are different, there's new technology here, like X, Y, and Z. Like, I'm used to popping open a new piece of hardware, and spending like a day and a half just tinkering with it. Just seeing what are the new things I can do with this magical device. What leaps and bounds of technology can I finally experience now with this wonderful new piece of hardware that I couldn't previously. And I very quickly learned that the Switch 2 is really just a more powerful Switch 1, which is really underwhelming in terms of that new, like, open the box and be like, oh, dang, like, this is my favorite new thing ever. Like, it's really just like, well, this is just more Switch. And it's like, oh, okay, I was really kind of expecting to be blown away here. And part of how my expectations were kind of set that way was there was no press release, like pre-release information on this. I got the console to play with the exact same day as all major media outlets did, which is kind of crazy to me, right? Most of the time, for these highly anticipated devices, journalists and outlets, media, they will get pre-release units to tinker with so that they can write and be like, hey, this is what's good, this is what's bad about it, you should buy or should not buy it. And normally that acts as just press, right? Getting people's eyeballs on it. Nintendo didn't feel the need to do that. So, like, I had only heard impressions from people who had already seen it behind closed doors with Nintendo sitting over their shoulder, giving them the most optimal view of what's going on and how to use it and so on and so forth. Which is kind of crazy, because, like, most of the impressions I was getting were really positive and, very kind of upbeat and really saying this thing was a really great piece of hardware and everything about it was fantastic. And now I think the general sentiment that I'm getting from people is, yeah, this thing's okay. Like, it's pretty underwhelming. Like, I really was expecting a really cool, shiny new piece of hardware, and I got another Switch. And while a new Switch was 100% needed, like, for a next-gen leap, it's underwhelming. And there's not really new features that are going to blow you away. And, like, it's not even really going to be performance that's going to blow you away, because you're going to get that performance, if not better, on other consoles. So it's like, like, I can go to my PS5 and start playing games that are on Switch right now, and they'll be pretty comparable. Not to say that I am not very happy with my Switch 2, and I intend on playing all of my games that I want to on Switch from Switch 1 on my Switch 2. There were still several games on my Switch 1 that I hadn't gotten around to, like Pikmin 4, that I really am excited to go to now, because I know that most Switch 1 games have been given updates that make them run really well on Switch 2. Like, specifically, I've been seeing a lot of people say the newest Pokemon, Scarlet and Violet, is leagues better on the Switch 2. It's, like, not even comparable. There's a very infamous, like, windmill in the Scarlet Violet that, like, runs at, like, 10 frames per second. It's abysmal, horrific. In Switch 2, it runs at a smooth 60, baby, and it looks like a game that was meant to run on that console. It's crazy. Which, like, I am so glad that that's the case, that all those games are not locked to horrific performance on a horrible device that really couldn't handle them. at the time. And like now they can be kind of shown in a much better light and played in a much better light. But like, I'm very excited for that, and I'm glad that I have it because I know in a month I'm going to have Donkey Kong Bonanza, which I'm very much looking forward to. And I wouldn't be able to play Mario Kart World without it. And in the future, there's going to be Zelda and 3D Mario and all these other first-party Nintendo titles that I'm definitely going to want to play, and they're all going to be locked to Switch 2. I'm not going to be able to play them on Switch 1. So, like, this is a necessary investment for me no matter what, because I do like Nintendo games and I do intend on playing them in the future, right? Seeing the improvement from Switch 1 to Switch 2 in terms of performance, I was saying a while back, I'll get Metroid Prime 4 on Switch 1. And I'll get the Switch 1 copy of it. It'll run on Switch 2. And then I'll be hunky dory. I'll save $10 because it's $70 on Switch 2. I think $60 on Switch 1. And now I'm 100% refusing to do that. Like I'm like, no, I absolutely will buy the Switch 2 copy of the game because it will run that much better. It's so noticeable between these Switch 1 to Switch 2 comparisons. I absolutely refuse to play a Switch 1 version of the game. So, like really what you're paying for the Switch 2 for is future access to Nintendo titles and better performance overall for your Switch 1 games. And slash Switch 2 games, obviously. And I think that's a pretty worthwhile investment, to be quite frank. It is not something to freak out about. It's not something to be over the moon about. And yeah, it can be a little underwhelming considering that, we're kind of used to these big reveals, these big mind-blowing moments from hardware to hardware. And I think in general, we're going to stop seeing as many of those just because, the leaps in technology are less noticeable, but also because Nintendo refused to change anything with this. They were so traumatized by the Wii U, trying to change that in a significant way, that they are like, no, like the Switch clearly works. It's clearly not something we need to mess up. It's not broken, so we're not going to fix it. So they have just really re-released the Switch 1 with better specs, and then just put a 2 at the end of it. And there are other things going on here, which I'll get into in a moment. But like, for the most part, while I am enjoying the hardware and I'm looking forward to my time spending more time with it, I really can't say that I'm like over the moon with my purchase. I'm satisfied with it, but I'm not over the moon with it. Really was expecting to be a little bit more over the moon than I am. Again, happy with it, not ecstatic with it. So what the frick are you buying this thing for right now? Like, why are you doing that? Other than playing your Switch 1 games at better performance rates, what the frick do you want this thing for? Well, there's 2 exclusive games, which I happened to play, and I'm going to tell you about right now. Number 1 is Welcome Tour, which is what we're going to start off with. Yeah, not what you probably wanted to hear about, but let's be real. It's worth talking about, okay? So the 2 exclusive games that come with the Switch 2 at launch are Welcome Tour and Mario Kart World. Obviously, Mario Kart World being the big one. However, Welcome Tour is also technically a game and something that you have to pay for in order to get onto your Switch 2 device. Very controversial at its announcement because it was not even given a price range when announced. It was just a paid-for game in the initial announcement. It is a game in which you are a little man on a Switch 2 specifically, and you go through and you experience or learn about all of the wonderful and magnificent features of the Switch 2 hardware. When I say that, I mean literally everything, specifically the dock, the insides of the controllers, the screen itself, the buttons, the vibration, everything. You learn about all of it in a very infotainment kind of way. Specifically, there are 3 ways that you can interact with Welcome Tour. Or I guess technically 4, if you really want to get down to brass tacks. One is mini games. So one that's in the promotional material and one that I've played as well is like a putt-putt game, kind of, showing off the gyroscope of the controllers that you can utilize. Another way are demos. So another well-known one is maracas. So it's not necessarily a mini game. There's no objective. It's literally you just shaking your controllers and the game mimics your movements as maracas. And then you have, like vibrations and stuff that kind of go along with that and sounds with the hardware. And then finally are quizzes, which are by far like is this really how we're going to do this kind of thing, where you go up to an area and you read informational slides about a piece of the hardware, and then you answer quiz questions based on the slides that you just read. It is as fun as you'd expect. And by that I mean not very. So you're probably thinking, dang, Henry, this game must suck. And honestly, I mean, kinda. Okay, let's be real. I'm going to break this down in a way, hopefully, that makes sense. Welcome Tour is a bad game. Unless you're a freaking nerd. And I am a freaking nerd, okay? So I have... This stuff goes into some really, to me, interesting, specifically the trivia, like the quizzes, go into some really interesting elements of console design that I've never heard any publisher or whatever developer, however you want to say it, go into before. And it's fascinating to me to hear about this because, again, I am a freaking nerd. And so, like, one thing I was talking to a friend about was, like, one of the trivia things is, like, the dock for the Switch 2 is rounded. So, like, if you have a Switch 1, you'll know that the dock is just a rectangle. And if you have a Switch 2, you'll know that the dock is rounded. It has a rounded edges. And they're like, oh, well, we actually did that for a reason, because it makes it easier for you to detach the Joy-Cons from the device while it's docked. And I was like, oh, frick. They thought of frickin' everything. These guys are geniuses. I was like, dang. And there's like a lot of actual kind of little tiny things that's like, oh, okay, yeah, I kind of get why that is the way it is now. Like, that kind of makes sense. And, like, there is a lot in every little minor part of the Switch, too, that is like, oh, yeah, like, they had to think about how to fix this problem. Like, they clearly had an issue with what they were trying to accomplish with the hardware. And in order to fix that problem, or in order to make it a more user-friendly experience, they had to alter it, or they had to put this in place to make it easier, or they had to design this element in this way. And I think that is fascinating. But I like game design. Like, I like the nitty-gritty of, like, what makes a game fun? How do we design a game to be fun? What makes this game fun? How did they design it that way in order to do that? How did they think about that in a way that made them get to this point in design? And your eyes may be glazing the frick over right now, and you may be like, everything you're saying is boring. It's lame. No one cares about this. You're a weirdo. Maybe. But that is who Welcome Tour is for. That's your audience, okay? I am honestly like, Okay, even though I am the audience for Welcome Tour, freaking nerds who want to understand the technology and every little thought process that went into it, even though I am that audience, I can only play Welcome Tour for like 1.5 hours before I start getting bored. And I'm like, okay, like I don't know how much more of this I can take. Like, this is a lecture. Like, I'm really not having fun here. I am learning, and like that's not necessarily like the funnest freaking thing of all time. And like, so like after an hour and a half, I was like, I'm definitely switching over to Mario Kart World. But then when I went to Mario Kart World, when I went to bed that night, I was like, dang, I kind of can't wait to learn some more fun facts about the Switch 2 and how it was designed and why it is the way it is, which is kind of insane that I was thinking that and not thinking, dang, I can't wait to play more Mario Kart World, which we will get into in a second. But like, that's freaking weird, right? Like, that's kind of insane. And I again, this game is not that fun. Like, I would even say the mini games really push you to try and master them, which is kind of crazy. And I would say the mini games in general have a lot of issues. And I'm not saying in terms of how they're designed per se, but in how they expect you to interact with them specifically. So here's something that is a major component of the Switch 2, and I didn't even know that before playing it, was the mouse. Okay, everybody, we've talked about it on this show. Everybody I listen to is like, yo, mouse on the Switch 2, that's going to be crazy. That's going to be out of this world. Like, you can play PC games pretty much on a Switch 2. And I'm like, I have always been the guy sitting back here like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. When are you going to freaking have an opportunity to do that? Like, it is a handheld console. You're going to be using it in one of two situations. On the go, you're going to be in a car, on a plane, and you want to use a freaking mouse? Where are you going to have the freaking space? Where are you going to have the surface to reliably and comfortably use a mouse? You're not. Or you're going to be sitting on your sofa and your Switch is going to be hooked up to your TV. Your controllers are going to be on your lap and on your sofa. Where are you going to use a freaking mouse? You're going to bend over and have a really hunched back on your coffee table? You're going to use it on your sofa cushion? Bro, you're going to bring a mouse pad around with you everywhere to make sure you have a nice surface for using a mouse? Bro, this is not feasible. Like, there is no way that this is a major component of games like that you're going to utilize very frequently. No way. Like 90%, not 90, but like 60% of everything minigame related in Welcome Tour is mouse related. And there's so many things in the game that's like, yo, these mouse controls, they're a game changer. Like, Nintendo directly telling the player, yo, I can't wait to see what kind of crazy freaking games you're going to be able to play with mouse controls. And I'm sitting here like, what the frick are you talking about, dude? Like, we have thousands of games that are played exclusively with mouse. It's called the freaking PC. It's like Nintendo has been like, they've opened up this world of like mouse compatibility with video games that no one has ever considered before. And I'm like, bro, we've done this. Since the dawn of video games, we've done this. Like, what the frick are we talking about here? Like, this is kind of a weird thing to be touting as this really big deal. But that is what Welcome Tour, a lot of it is doing, is being like, no, like Nintendo is really doubling down and really trying to be firm that like this mouse thing is something they really believe in and they think is the big game changer for the Switch 2. And I'm like, bro, I don't know. I've used it in multiple circumstances, obviously in Welcome Tour. They even are like, yo, you should use the mouse in the home screen. When you're like, I'm like, there's no shot I'm ever going to use the mouse in the home screen, but okay. Like, the analog stick is so much more easy to freaking, like, navigate the menu on the Switch 2 than a freaking mouse. Like, I have no interest in that, but okay. But they're like, yeah, I'll play all these mini games and stuff, navigate all the things you ask me to with the mouse. And honestly, yeah, the mouse is fairly impressive for what it is. They specifically even say, like, we anticipate you using your lap as a mouse pad. Like, that's what we expect, is for you to use a mouse, like your lap as a mouse pad. Like, that's where you're going to use it. And I was just like, that's kind of crazy to expect the player to never be able to really use the mouse in like a normal way. You're always going to be using, like, if I was using my mouse for my computer on my freaking leg, that would be like probably not the most enjoyable experience. It'd probably jump around and not track very easily, and it wouldn't be great. But like in this instance, I really had very few issues with that in playing these mini games and stuff. Was it like perfect? No. But was it pretty seamless to switch between mouse and regular controls and like utilizing that for mini games and stuff? Yeah, honestly, way more so than I expected it to be. So like I understand that, but at the same time, I still think this is not that good of an idea long term with this particular console. And they almost kind of prove that in some of their mini games, because a lot of the mini games I haven't even had the opportunity to play because I've been playing primarily with the game or with the console hooked up to my TV because I wanted to see a big picture, right? And, kind of utilize the HDR on my TV and, the 4K, so on and so forth, which obviously, the Switch 2, like, natively does not have 4K because it's a very small screen. But I wanted to kind of get the most out of that. So, but they were like, you can't even play this minigame unless you move to handheld mode. I was like, oh, well, frick. I guess I'm not freaking playing that minigame right now then. But like some of the minigames, they tell you to do that. And then they're like, well, you need to detach both Joy-Cons from the console and then use them in mouse mode to play this minigame. And so it's like, okay, well, you're now holding your legs together, like with the Switch 2 screen, like in your lap, and like you have both of your hands unable to hold the screen, or like, you're going to have to prop it up and use like the stand, and you have both of your hands in like, both of your hands are occupied with the mouse controls, and it's like, it's not very intuitive for a normal play session, or at least like switching between all of these, like different configurations that the Switch 2 is asking you to do in Welcome Tour to play these mini games. So like there's already some like cracks in the armor that are kind of showing from here and there around this. But like at the end of the day, this is a $10 game, and it's honestly got a lot of content. Like, that was something Nintendo specifically said, was like, there is a lot of content in this game, and we honestly thought that $10 was a pretty reasonable price, and we put a lot of effort into it, and it's a really well-polished game, and like, I kind of agree with that. Like, there's probably at least 5 to 8 hours worth of content, and then like definitely more if you wanted to like really see everything in this game and get all the medals and stuff like that, and like master these mini games. Like, which again are just tech demo mini games. They are not like actually great mini games or anything like that. Like, it's a one hole of putt-putt, like it's not like the funnest game you're ever going to play, but it is a tech demo to show off how these things work. Like, you can probably get a lot of mileage out of it, right? So like $10, I get where Nintendo's coming from. $10 isn't really a lot to ask, and that's why I was kind of willing to pony it up just to see what it was all about. Bro, it's really hard for me to recommend this to anybody, though. And then on top of it is a paid-for game that basically should be marketing materials. Like, this is a manual for your freaking Switch. Like, you should be able to... They should have sent this out to press units, with press units or something, to the media, and been like, these are all the cool features of the Switch 2. that's kind of insane to me that they make you pay to see that. That being said, again, there are mini games here. There are this, that, and the other. And you're like, well, I'll just freaking, if the coolest thing here is the trivia, I'll just go on YouTube and I'll watch a playthrough of it and I'll be freaking, like I'll save $10 and I'll read all the cool trivia. And it's like, well, some of the cool stuff you can only actually experience because it's demonstrating the hardware itself. So, like, one of the cool things that they showed off was, like, we enhanced the vibration in the controllers. And when we did that, now we can make it do sounds. And so, like, because sounds are vibrations, right? So, like, now we have such sophisticated vibration, we can actually produce sounds using the vibrations. And, like, they show off, like, okay, press this button and it will produce, your vibrations in your controller will produce a coin sound effect, like a da-ding, from like Mario. And then like press it again and we'll do a one-up sound, do-no-no-no-no-no, like that, one-up sound effect from Mario. And like it legit sounds like those kind of things, not like exactly one-to-one, but utilizing the vibrations in the controller, that's kind of cool. And like the maracas or whatever, you can watch a playthrough of that on YouTube, I guess, but like, I mean, it's not going to give you the same haptic feedback that you're going to experience from holding the controllers, like so on and so forth. Like the mouse controls, obviously, you're not going to be able to experience via a YouTube playthrough. Like you really, honestly, in order to feel the technology and see a lot of what Nintendo is talking about, you have to be holding the console and interacting with it like in person. You can't get that full experience watching the game played on YouTube. So like if you really and truly want every bit of like, oh, that's really cool what this console is capable of, oh, that hardware is really cool, I really think that's interesting, you really honestly need to play it for yourself. And like that's where this game is so frustrating, because it's like it just should have been free. Like you look around and you're like, Astrobot was on a PlayStation 5 at launch, and it was a great game, and it showed off the capabilities of the PlayStation 5. It showed off the big thing for the PlayStation 5 was its new controller, and the new controller had all these functionalities, and Astrobot seamlessly showed off all of those things and gave you a really fun game to play at the same time. And Nintendo is over here making basically the video game equivalent of a PowerPoint presentation and charging you $10 to even get in on it. And when you see that in comparison to a free game like Astrobot that basically tries to accomplish the exact same thing in a way more fun format, it is really hard to sit here and be like, yeah, it's actually really cool that Nintendo did this. Like when there is already a precedent set by Astrobot that like this is stupid. Like this is nowhere near as good as Astrobot, and Astrobot did it for free. Like what the frick is going on here? It's Nintendo doing another Nintendo move, right? But like as a guy, all right, who says I actually have gotten a lot out of this, I find it incredibly hard to recommend. Incredibly hard. So difficult. I would only say if you are an ultra nerd like myself, you would enjoy this. And you like legit are like so deep into video games that you're probably listening to this podcast, and you also care about hardware, and you also care about game design and user experience and all that other stuff, and you find that fascinating. This is like a game that you will probably get your $10 out of. This game is also well designed. It has that Nintendo charm to it. It has that Nintendo polish. Like, it is a well-made game, okay? And it has a lot of charm and character that comes from every Nintendo title, right? It's crazy this game costs $10. It's crazy it costs $10. Should have just... $10? Bro, just take the hit. You're Nintendo. Just take the freaking hit, give it for free, and call it a day. Say, like, we're so glad that people care enough to put the time, not only money. They also paid $500 for this console, but like not only the time but the money to put into this piece of software that we made to show off how proud we are of our particular system. I think if this game was $0.00, I think you'd see people say, yeah, give it a shot. Like it's not for everybody, but that's cool. But because they are charging $10, which even though $10 is a very low barrier to entry for most people, it's still like, oh my gosh, $10 for this? Are you kidding? Like that's, it could have just been for me and for me to enjoy, and I wouldn't have had to jump on them, but they had to charge $10 for it. And again, even though that's so little, you have to call them out for it. You really do, and it's really unfortunate. But yeah, that's a welcome tour. One of your big Nintendo Switch 2 launch titles. The other, of course, being the highly anticipated Mario Kart World. Mario Kart World, which was obviously, and I didn't actually think about this until a friend kind of pointed it out to me, but he was like, this is the first Mario Kart we've gotten in a really long time. And I was like, oh, I guess you're right, because the last Mario Kart, one of the best-selling Mario / Nintendo games ever, / the best-selling game in general on the Switch by a long shot, is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is a re-release of Mario Kart 8, which was a Wii U game. So, and obviously the Switch has overstayed its welcome, so like this is a really long time coming for another Mario Kart game, and I didn't even think about that. But like the big hook here, there's really two hooks. One is you can now like wall run and freaking grind on pipes and stuff like that, which is cool. We'll get into it in a second. But the other one is a big open world. Mario Kart World. It's literally in the title of the game, right? There's no number here. It is world. So the big thing that was shown off as part of this game was there's a freaking open world in this game. You can drive around it. You can chill out with people in it. You can explore all the Mario Kart stages. All the stages are connected. They're interconnected in a singular world. And that made my mind start racing. I was like, this is basically like, and I think a lot of people kind of thought the exact same way I did. This is the crew, I'm going to get a group of friends together, and we're going to be driving across, the open world Mario Kart area, and we're going to be, like doing missions and doing races and, collecting all this cool stuff, and it's going to be rad. Like, it's going to be an open world Mario Kart game. I was thinking straight up, like, there may be a single player, like, kind of mission structure to this game. Like, this is a really big step for Mario Kart. Like, wow, I can't wait to see what this entails. And I hate to inform you that there is really not much that it entails at all. This is a real letdown in terms of the promise of an open world game. Or what was assumed when you say world, open world game. This open world is comprised of, yes, the tracks that are in the Grand Prix and versus races that you will do in your normal modes, but also like large swaths of open area that generally don't have much interesting in them. I have not fully explored the map, but like I've explored enough of it to know there is nothing in between these tracks that's really worth seeing. There are mini missions which are kind of scattered around haphazardly. They are, when I say mini missions, I really mean that. It's like, well, collect 8 coins in this open field, and you'll do that, and you'll finish it, and it'll take 30 seconds to do. Or drive through all of these rings on this road, this stretch of road, and you'll do that, and you'll finish it in 30 seconds, and that'll be it. And the rewards for these missions are emblems or stickers. I think they're called stickers in the game, but they're essentially emblems. And you get a random one every single time you do one, or at least there's no way to know what you're going to get prior. And you essentially can only utilize these stickers in a collectible fashion or to put next to your name in like multiplayer. Again, because you don't know which one you're going to get, it makes it very difficult to be like, oh, well, I think this one is cool. I'm going to go do that challenge or something like that. You really just kind of have to just kind of spray and pray with what the frick missions you're going to be taking and what you're going to be getting. And I very quickly was like, I don't care about these emblems. I kind of have one that I care about enough, and I'm kind of done with it. And okay, that's cool. I'm not doing any of these missions ever again. Then there are peach coins that are scattered around. They are kind of more harder to collect coins or collectibles they're not like littered. So like they're in kind of more hard to reach places most often at the times. I have not found any way to use them. I have not found any reason to collect them. They are just there. I'm sure that there must be a reason for them. If you collect all of them, maybe. There's no way to track them or anything like that, so I have no idea. Then you have question mark pads, which on the tracks themselves, so not in the open world, but on the tracks themselves in the open world, there are question mark pads that you can like basically run over, and once you've collected them all, I have not done that for a singular track, so I don't know what they do. But, like, you're essentially supposed to collect them all for each track. I, again, cannot imagine anything is massive there. And then there are skins to pick up. And you're like, oh, skins, cool. You know, like, that'd be actually pretty rad to have, like, different skins for the characters in Mario Kart. And that is really rad, actually, until you realize how it's done. And there are, like, little boost power-ups, I guess, that take the form of food in this game that Yoshi restaurants, dine and drives have at various points in the map. And essentially all you have to do is just pick one of those up and use it, and you get the skin. And multiple characters can often get a skin from that particular food item. So all you do is you just take that food item, you eat it, and then you switch to another character, which you can do at any time on the fly. You switch to another character, and then you eat that food item as them, and then you get the skin, and you just do that until you have all the skins. And I was just like, yeah, you don't have to earn it, and it's really kind of grindy to even get them with all of the characters because you're not doing anything. Like, why not just give me the freaking skin for... I would much rather earn the skin. Like, give me the skin for completing a Grand Prix with, Peach, Give me Peach's skin by completing a Grand Prix with Peach. I genuinely would prefer that over this particular system and make me feel like I freaking earned a skin, Like, it's very frustrating that, like, clearly Nintendo has done open worlds before, not massive ones, and not particularly in-depth ones either, but, like, they certainly have, and I think anybody with any kind of, like, that's literally played a game with an open world, like, you don't have to have made a game with an open world, you just play a game with an open world, and you can immediately say, dang, this open world is really lacking content and incentives to explore it, and even the incentives we have there are really underwhelming, and maybe we should, like, do something here. And it's kind of crazy that, like, this game is called Mario Kart World. If it was just Mario Kart 9 and they were like, yeah, there's an additional mode we threw in there, it's not that big a deal, but, like, essentially all the tracks are connected, and you can kind of, like, you can just go to them. You can just drive from one to another if you really felt like it, and there's some, like, fields and stuff. I really don't think it would be as big of a deal as it is now, because it's like, we called the game Mario Kart World. It's the first Mario Kart game in, like, a decade, and, like, the promo material was like, this is a big part of the game, and, like, in all honesty, even the open world aspects of this game are a very minor part of even the menu when you start up the game. It's like, they're like, yeah, like, I mean, you can go into the open world. Like, I genuinely didn't even know how to access the open world when I first started up the game, because at the bottom of the menu, There's two ways to access it. There's like, you can press the minus button, which is like buried away at the bottom corner of the screen. It's like press the minus button to enter open world, and it'll just randomly drop you somewhere in the open world. Or you can select map and then select a place to then drop into the open world, which I didn't know that. I thought it was literally just looking at the map. So like I didn't care about it. So it's like I genuinely had no idea how to access the open world immediately when I started the game, which again, for a game with world in the title that specifically points out, hey, this is an open world game in the marketing, that's kind of crazy. I still don't even know if you can actually drive around with friends in the open world. I couldn't even figure that out. If you could do it, I genuinely didn't figure out how to do it. I even played with a friend, which, by the way, we did do voice chat. We tried that out, and we shared screens. And, yeah, the games look exactly like they do in the Nintendo Direct. Like, it is 10 frames per second. It is cool that you can do that, and that's, like, very default. Like, you can technically do that on PlayStation 5. You can share your screen and, like, have a game chat with somebody. But, like, this is default. Like, you have the ability very quickly to share screens and very easily. It's not as easy to do in native as in PlayStation 5, even though they own Gaikai to do it. But anyway, it's like, it is what it is. It's game chat that they're going to make you pay for in a year. But anyway, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy, and it really is a letdown, and in what was obviously the most interesting part of this game for me, and what made this like a day one buy for me, other than the fact that it was, a launch title for the Switch 2, it kind of justified your purchase, and it was cheaper with the bundle. It's kind of a letdown, Moving on to the main part of Mario Kart, which is actually like the normal part of Mario Kart. It's Mario Kart, baby. I mean, it's still Mario Kart. It is still lots of fun. It is still a party game that is great played with friends online, which seems to be pushed a lot more in this game. And then, they've got some new modes, some returning modes that weren't in 8 Deluxe that, make this a really comprehensive package. I'm not as happy with the Grand Prix because I actually don't like the leading into other stages as much. I like the concept of that, but the execution just makes me feel like, I really feel like this isn't a track right now. I'm just driving a stretch of a long, straight, narrow pathway to another track, and I'd rather just be driving that cool track right now. So I'm not as into that, but you can do like just tracks without having to do that connected pathway. And I'm honestly a lot more okay with that. There are new power-ups that you can use. In fact, a good number of them. I think I counted like 7. A couple of them are like pretty small tweaks. They're not particularly huge. But like they're they're new, they're power-ups. One of them is like not even a power-up. It's like that wizard dude. I forget his name. But he basically just changes everybody on the course into a different enemy from Mario. It does nothing but change your cosmetic. But, like, you will unlock that character to play as if you get turned into them by that wizard. So, like, essentially that's the point of that power-up. Honestly, I don't know if I love that, and I would definitely turn it off for competitive play. But, like, it is what it is. It's cool that you get more skins and more people to play as. There are plenty of more people to play as. Obviously, you can play as the cow. Big deal. You can play as the penguin. Big deal. Penguin, honestly, looking to steal my spot as my main character in Mario Kart. Freaking love the penguin. But you can play as a lot of different characters. There's a lot of different skins that act as, like, their own individual character. So, not that changes anything, but, it is. I was unlocking things pretty regularly playing the game. And then obviously you play all the courses and you unlock the final cup, which then you can get like Rainbow Road, which apparently that was the story of the game, is like Rainbow Road is gone and you need to get Rainbow Road back. I didn't know that. That was never communicated to me throughout the game. But like by the time I got there, I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. I guess there was something I was working towards this entire time. But it was very obvious to me that was going to happen because there was no Rainbow Road listed in any of the tracks that are available when you first start the game. But if you want to play with friends or something, then you definitely need to play through all the tracks, which won't take you because you want to have access to all the tracks to play with your friends. But you want to play through all the initial tracks because you want those final tracks. But that'll only take you like 4 or 5 hours, something like that. So it's not like, or maybe like 5 or 6 hours. But it's not like a crazy investment. But like, it's still a fun, like Mario Kart is Mario Kart. It's kind of a perfect formula at this point. There's no really a big need to change it. And I don't think they are going to change it. What the big change here is you can charge a jump. So everybody knows how to drift in Mario Kart. Or if you're familiar with Mario Kart, you know how to drift. You can now hold that drift and not be turning, and you will charge a jump. You will then get a jump. You'll get a boost when you land the jump, and you can use those jumps to then like turn or like jump onto a wall, and you can or rail, and you can grind a rail, and you can like run on or like drive on walls for a short period of time. And that basically, I very quickly was like, this is going to up the skill ceiling for this game so high. Like Mario Kart has always been a pretty casual game. When I was at MomoCon, I saw the finals for like the regional tournament of Mario Kart, and I didn't even realize that Mario Kart could be very competitive. But like Mario Kart specifically at a high competitive level is a lot of specifically knowing how to utilize power-ups that you pick up randomly. So there's still a lot of randomness that goes into even competitive levels of Mario Kart play. But obviously a whole lot of skill too, and I realized that watching them play. But like in this, it's like, bro, no, there's going to be so much more skill involved here. Like a casual person will not be able to compete at all with somebody who's actually good at Mario Kart World. Like it wouldn't even be comparable. Like you'd be just absolutely slapped across the face because the person who can utilize these jumps and these like rail grinds and wall rides is going to be able to access most of the shortcuts. They're going to be able to, like go a lot faster around places. If you aren't utilizing them to use shortcuts, it's almost not worth using them at all. I saw a video on YouTube comparing like just going straight without doing anything and using these boosts just, for a short period of time. And most of the time, in fact, almost all of the time, it was faster to just never utilize the boosting and like the jumping and the wall riding at all. And I was like, what the frick are we doing here? Like clearly these are only to be used to interact with shortcuts. But like that is a tall order for most people. It's also not very like intuitive. Like everybody I've talked to about the game has been like, yeah, honestly, I didn't even know how to do the jumps initially. Somebody had to tell me. It is in the tutorial. You can go, there is a tutorial that you can look at and it will tell you. But like I just assumed it would be very intuitive, and it's not very intuitive at all. Even first figuring it out and then using it is even harder. Like everybody I've talked to about that has been like, nah, like using it in like jumping on things and knowing when to release at the right time and how to charge it correctly, which by the way, if you're charging a jump, you will be slower than if you're just accelerating normally. So it is a risk you're taking by engaging in the jump mechanic at all, that you're just going to lose speed and therefore lose your place in the race. But essentially they were like, yeah, it's honestly really difficult for me to figure this out. I still am trying to figure it out. Again, I'm not more than like 6 hours put into the game, but like, and most of that time I hadn't really been engaging with the jumps, or the wall rides or anything like that. I really hadn't figured out how to do it yet. But like when I did, I was like, dang, yeah, this is kind of rough. Like this is definitely something that's going to take practicing. And people, and what I love about Mario Kart is this is a great casual game that you can pick up with anybody, people who really don't play very often or aren't very good at games. And a lot of the time you're going to be on a lot more equal footing than if you played like a freaking Super Smash Brothers or something like that, And it's like, oh, well, this guy's basically a freaking professional fighter in freaking Smash Brothers. And it's like, well, then there's no way I can compete. Like, I might as well not even freaking play the game, because these guys are just going to wipe my tail. They're going to kick my tail and then wipe it to be nice. But anyway, like I think it puts a barrier on Mario Kart that makes it a lot more competitive and a lot harder to master. And I don't know if I love that. Like, I think I would have preferred if it would have. I mean, give me wall rides, give me rail grinds, that's fine. But adding an extra layer of skill to utilize those is what frustrates me. Or not frustrates me, but concerns me. It concerns me that it turns this game into a much higher skill ceiling and it's a much slower burn for people to figure out than previous Mario Kart games, which are just games you can get drunk with your friends and frickin', play a few rounds with, and everybody's having a good time. I think it kind of puts a barrier on that. But it is what it is. It's still a very fun game. Tracks are still super fun. Like, there are some really good tracks in here. I don't know. I still think I prefer Mario Kart 8's tracks overall to this. Maybe I'm just biased because I really like Mario Kart 8. You can still play all your Switch 1 games, though, on Switch 2. So you can still play Switch 8 or Mario Kart 8 on the Switch 2. But, in this case, there were a couple of standout tracks that I really thought were super cool. Like, there's one track where you're, racing basically the original Donkey Kong game, where, he's throwing barrels down and, Mario's jumping over them, the arcade game. You're essentially playing a Mario Kart version of that with a giant evil robot Donkey Kong. And he's throwing barrels down, kind of a windy path. And I thought that track was genius. I was like, this is amazing. I was like, I love this track. But a lot of tracks haven't stood out to me. Again, I've only played each one of them once at this point. But a lot of tracks haven't really stood out to me as much as that one did. I was really hoping there'd be one for every cup. There would be a really awesome track that stood out like that. And I didn't really see as many of those. That was definitely the standout track for me in this. But overall, I'm really interested to see how a fun game night with friends would be with this kind of game, or with this game specifically, to see if the jumping would really F people over and make it harder on people or not. But this is still Mario Kart, and it's still a lot of fun, and I still think it is an essential pickup for anybody with a Nintendo console. It's still going to be one of the best-selling games on the platform for its lifetime. If you like Mario Kart, you're going to like this game. It's impossible for me to tell you, don't pick up this game if you love Mario Kart. It's still that. But, to say that there's clearly some questionable things in this game that do not affect the overall, you can still play this game the way you used to with Mario Kart 8 and have an amazing time. You can completely ignore the open world. You never have to touch it. And the jumping is definitely something that is a little bit more, debatable on if it affects the core of the gameplay experience. If you never want to engage in that, you don't have to, but everybody else could. So, it just is what it is. I'm really interested to see how people kind of adapt to that in a party setting. Because I don't think it's as intuitive as just normal Mario Kart controls. So if it's not, then it's going to be obviously harder for a normal group of people, a regular group of people that don't normally play this game, to pick it up and just make it a fun party game. So, it is what it is. I still think this game is great. I still think it's a solid 8. But with some very disappointing changes that I wish either could have been rethought or improved. I think improved significantly is definitely what I would kind of land on there. I wish the open world could have been improved, and I wish that the driving mechanics with the jumping and the wall riding could be a little bit more intuitive. And I don't know how you do that. I'm not a game designer. Obviously I can tell you how you freaking make the open world better, but the wall riding, honestly, I don't know. I wouldn't make it so you have to charge it, and there's all sorts of logistics behind that, in terms of, how you press the buttons, when you press the buttons, so on and so forth. So, it is what it is. This is still going to be a gangbuster game and a game that everybody needs to have for the Switch too. It is what it is. You know, you if you own a Nintendo console, you just kind of have to have the Mario Kart game. You kind of have to have the Smash Brothers, and you kind of have to have the Zelda or the Mario, 3D Mario or whatever. Like, you know, this is one of those ones that nobody can get around, you know? It's just kind of cemented itself as one of the staples in gaming for a lot of people and a lot of groups, and a very accessible group at that. So, I mean, you know, it is what it is. I know it sounds like I'm not super high on this game, but, like, it's almost like not being super high on, like, freaking, I don't know, steak. It's like, even if you're not a big steak person, you have to admire the fact that, like, it is, like, one of the best meats. You know, like, you know, it is what it is, you know? So, you know, that's my impression of the software for the Switch 2. So overall, I'd say I'm a little underwhelmed so far with my Switch 2 experience, which is really kind of unfortunate, right? I still think that there's plenty enough here to justify my purchase, and I certainly know that, I mean, I already have, you know, money down on Donkey Kong Bonanza, and I know that game's going to be amazing, and I know I'm going to love that game. So, like, this Switch 2 is already kind of, I already know I'm going to get what I want out of this. So it is, for me, fine. Absolutely fine, and I'm very happy with it. Hopefully, based on what I've said, maybe you can make a decision on if the Switch 2 is something you want or need right now, or never, or, you know, maybe in the future. You know, when it's maybe not so hard to get, which apparently is still not super hard to get. So, you know, it is what it is. I think overall, this is probably the weakest console launch I've seen in a while, even though objectively there's really nothing wrong with it. Like, everything here I didn't hate, and some things I even really, really liked, but, like, nothing has wowed me. Nothing has blown my gasket, per se. I am still firmly feet planted on the floor, butt in my seat, and fairly monotone, if you cannot tell. So not yelling and yipping for joy. But anyway, that's my impressions of everything, man. This has been a woozy-doozy-loozy of an episode, wouldn't you say? Over 3.5 hours. I was really trying to go fast through the Summer Games Fest stuff, too. That still took an hour per freaking conference. Oh, my gosh. My voice is definitely giving out. Like I said, I was had a little bit of a frog in my throat, so hopefully that didn't ruin it for you. But, you know, I'm still recovering. Voice didn't need this, but you know what? Gotta get that content out to the loyal fans. Speaking of which, thank you for being here, for listening to all that I have to say. I know what I have to say isn't really that important, but I appreciate you giving me your time, giving me your energy. Hopefully you enjoyed what I had to say. Hopefully I entertained you at least, kept you busy for the long ride home, wherever you are, however you are. I hope you're good. I hope you play some good video games, and I can't wait to talk to you next time. Bye-bye.